गवर्नमेंट सेल में हैं और मैं तो सर मैम को इस ग्रुप में जानता हूँ कि इस यूनिवर्सिटी में शायद सबसे ज़्यादा क्लास यही लेती है। हर सेंटर के विद्यार्थियों को भाषा सिखाने का काम, जिससे कि उनको वो विषय ज्ञान पे ध्यान केंद्रित कर सके, भाषा ज्ञान एक बाधा ना बने। इसके लिए सुबह से लेकर शाम तक लगातार उनकी कक्षाएं चलती रहती हैं। मैं डॉक्टर संदेशा जी का इस ज्ञान कार्यक्रम में स्वागत करता हूं और प्रोफेसर देवशंकर नवीन जी से निवेदन करता हूं कि एक स्मृति चिन्ह भेंट कर डॉक्टर संदेशा जी का इस ज्ञान कोर्स में स्वागत करें। डॉक्टर संदेशा मूलतः एक भाषा विज्ञानी हैं, लिंग्विस्ट हैं, इसलिए वे अनुवाद के भाषा वैज्ञानिक और सांस्कृतिक पहलुओं पर आज बात करेंगी और ये सेशन निश्चित तौर पर दिलचस्प होगा और एक संवादात्मक होगा। आप अपनी जिज्ञासाएं, अपने सवाल इसमें रखें और मैम से बात करें। उनका अनुभव बहुत संपन्न है। मैम अपनी मातृभाषा को जीवित करने के लिए भी, जो मातृभाषा बहुत कमजोर पड़ गई है, अब देख रहे हैं कि ग्लोबलाइजेशन के प्रेशर में बहुत सारी भाषाएं खतरे में हैं, तो इनकी मातृभाषा भी खतरे में थी, लेकिन उस भाषा को पुनर्जीवित करने के लिए अपने प्रोजेक्ट के माध्यम से, अपने प्रयासों के माध्यम से लगातार काम कर रही हैं। ऐसे बहुत सारे अनुभव आपको सुनने को मिलेंगे। मैं आमंत्रित करता हूँ डॉक्टर संदेशा रायपाल जी।
धन्यवाद सर। आई होप द पीपल ऑनलाइन कैन हियर मी। वो सुन पा रहे हैं? एक बार चेक कर लीजिएगा। क्या आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं? मैं आपको देख नहीं पा रही हूँ, बट आई होप यू आर एबल टू लुक एट द पीपीटी। मुझे देखना ज़रूरी नहीं है, पीपीटी को देख लीजिएगा और मेरी आवाज़ सुन लीजिएगा। बाकी जो यहाँ पे है, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर बीइंग हियर। सबसे पहले तो मैं आप लोग को ये बता दूँ कि दिस इज़ गोइंग टू बी वेरी इंटरैक्टिव। आप में से बाहर से कौन है जो जेएनयू के बाहर के स्टूडेंट्स हैं? जी, वेरी गुड। जी जी सर, हाँ फॉरएवर। थैंक यू सो मच सर। आप दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी के हैं? डीयू एंड इग्नू, ठीक है। डीयू में क्या पढ़ रहे हैं आप?
मैं अभी उर्दू और फारसी सीख रहा हूँ।
उर्दू और फारसी, बढ़िया। डिपार्टमेंट से? मास्टर्स और बैचलर्स?
सर्टिफिकेट डिप्लोमा कोर्स।
अच्छा, डिप्लोमा कोर्स है, गुड। एंड इग्नू से?
मास्टर्स इन इंग्लिश।
ओके, ऑलराइट। DMEG4, एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ लैंग्वेज, वो भी आता है। यस, ओके। और किसी और ने भी हाथ उठाया था। मैम को तो हम जानते हैं, मैम को तो हम अपना ही मानते हैं। मैम बोल रही है हाथ ऊपर करके। दूसरे कौन, किसी और ने भी उठाया था? यस, विच डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पॉलिटिकल। ओके, वेरी गुड। एंड द अदर पर्सन? ओके, निन्न पेरेंट കുറച്ച് കുറച്ച് മലയാളം. ओके, इट्स नाइस। एंड व्हाट अबाउट यू? जामिया से? अच्छा, बहुत बढ़िया। हम जेएनयू वालों ने तो जामिया वालों को एक बहुत बड़ी देन दी है। वापस लौटा दीजिएगा टाइम पे। और कौन है यहाँ पे? यस, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ हिंदी। ओके, वेरी गुड। बाकी लोग जो जेएनयू से है वो अपना हाथ उठा दीजिए। ओके, वेरी गुड। आप सब लोग हिंदी डिपार्टमेंट के? जो हिंदी डिपार्टमेंट के वो हाथ ऊपर कर लीजिए। ठीक है, ओके। और जो बाकी दूसरे डिपार्टमेंट्स के, आप कौन से डिपार्टमेंट से? फ्रेंच, ओके। एनीवन फ्रॉम लिंग्विस्टिक्स? ओके, लिंग्विस्टिक्स वालों को तो दे ऑलरेडी हैव ट्रांसलेशन स्टडीज एंड अदर लैंग्वेजेस, व्हिच वन? हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन, जी। हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन, जापानीज स्टडीज। ओके, वेरी गुड। यू? Arabic studies. Salam alaikum. Kaifa halak? Good, good. Zen. Who else? Yes? Center for Korean Studies. Okay. Philosophy. Very good. You? Urdu. ठीक है, बहुत बढ़िया. Now, the reason I wanted to know कि what is like the audience like, you know, थोड़ा बहुत मैं भी आपके साथ adjust कर लूँ. So I'll try to make it maybe as easy as possible for people who are not aware of linguistics or about translation. This is a mixed audience. जो मुझे ऑनलाइन सुन रहे हैं, ऑनलाइन देख रहे हैं, आई एम अज्यूमिंग यू आर हैविंग अ बेसिक नॉलेज ऑफ ट्रांसलेशन एंड इन फैक्ट आई थिंक यू हैड अ वंडरफुल सेशन विद मैम एंड मैम ने आप लोगों को काफ़ी कुछ, आई सॉ हर्स, इट वाज वेरी गुड. उन्होंने आपको बहुत सारी चीज़ों से इंट्रोड्यूस करा दिया है. So I'll try to take it forward from there. So मैंने उसके बारे में बताया है, but I'm, by the way, are you all comfortable in Hindi? Because I was told to be bilingual. So should I be bilingual? Yes? Okay. So wherever you're not able to understand, if I'm speaking in English, please raise your hands. Wherever you're not able to understand my Hindi, please raise your hands. Feel comfortable. Okay? So the topic that I was told was that since it's the title of the entire, the sessions and all, I took up this one, which is culture, language, and translation. This is a socio-linguistic approach. Socio-linguistics, as you know, a combination of sociology and linguistics. Linguistics is a scientific study of language. And I have been collecting, as sir was mentioning, data from not only my community in Uttarakhand, which is on the border of China, Tibet, and Nepal, but also recently I have a project with IIT Roorkee. You will see one particular poster about it, where we are collecting the indigenous knowledge of the communities out there in Chhattisgarh region, primarily right now from the Orao community who speak. Does anybody know what language they speak? Very good. Shabash ma'am के लिए एक surprise gift होना चाहिए. ताली हमारे लिए. Thank you, ma'am. So now, just I will give you one or two examples from there to kind of and make you also think of examples from your own cultures, your own communities. I think ma'am has already done a very good job of that. I'll just try to do my best. Okay, so the objective of today's sessions is to understand how culture influences language. I'm sure after these sessions, you would have already realized, and you would have realized it from before, and explore translation as a means of mediating the cultural differences. So how can translation, how does it mediate, okay? We'll try to answer that. Identify the challenges and strategies for effective cultural translation. Now, why is this topic important? Kudos to sir, सबसे पहले तो जो organizers हैं और volunteers, उनके लिए तालियां होनी चाहिए for choosing such a wonderful, the topic, the title, everything, for having a wonderful hostess, I would say, the speaker. And the topic is important because languages, they shape one's identity, okay? Cultural identity. Am I allowed to move? Because this online, that's what, okay. Yeah, okay. I think you just, can you hear me at the back, even without the mic? With the mic? Okay. Okay, hello. It's not working. Okay, hello. Okay, so मैं आपको एक बात बताना चाहती हूँ. So till the age of 21 years, till I came to JNU to do my masters in the Center for Linguistics and English, I thought my mother tongue is Hindi. Okay, believe it or not. I thought, yeah, wherever mother tongue was asked, I would write Hindi. So when I came here, because I belong to a community that has an endangered language known as Ranglo. Okay, Ranglo is my language. But I didn't know. I know it was my language, but I didn't know that that was my mother tongue, because I thought mother tongue means that you should be very good, very fluent in your mother tongue. So when the faculty out here, when she was explaining to us and telling us a definition, she told us that it's not necessarily that you know your mother tongue, because your mother tongue is your ethnic identity. Okay. Now, interestingly, I have always been I was born and raised in Dubai. So in Dubai, everyone did not believe I was an Indian. So, till they didn't hear me or came to know about me, they would always think that I was from some other country. Even in my own country, when I came to India, I was misunderstood to be from another part, from the neighboring country, Nepal, or from another state. Okay, that time Uttarakhand was part of UP. So when I came here and I realized that this is an ethnic identity, so it made sense, because if I tell you Hindi, but if I just saying Hindi doesn't make me a person from a particular state. So that those connections are there. So language and culture, which we know as Bhasha and Sanskriti, they are intertwined, okay? So they're literally like this. You can't take one out of the other. But interestingly, if you look at it, the title had culture first, not language first. Generally, you will always see it comes language and then culture. Rarely do you find culture coming first. So anybody, why do you think, what's the reason? Why is it that culture came first? Was it done purposely? क्या षड्यंत्र था इसके पीछे? Why did I have culture coming first? Okay, so think about this question, because that's also going to come up. Now, going forward, translation bridges cultures. Definitely, no doubt about it. We have people from Korean and Arabic over here, people speaking Malayalam over here. And if they don't know English or they don't know Hindi, then through the interpreters, through the translators, we are able to connect. right? They do a fabulous job if they are very fluent in both the languages, and they're able to bridge the gap that we have. How do they bridge the gap? Now, social linguistic impacts communication. Definitely does. So, the first question for all of you, what comes to mind when you think about the impact of culture on language? What do you think? Is there an impact of culture on language? Yes or no? Yes? Okay, like how?
Uh, Prima facie, one can think of tone one uses and the idioms that come in language.
Okay.
So I'll take example from my own mother tongue, Haryanvi.
Okay.
So Haryanvi is often referred to as a Latmar language.
Yes. By the way, for people who don't know what Latmar is, do you know what is Latmar? Lut is this lut, which the police uses sometimes on protesters and all. And Mar is beating, okay?
So Haryanvi has its own unique tone that is very unique to it. I mean, to the extent, the lahja, how it is spoken.
The style.
Yeah.
What is your name?
Keshav.
Keshav ji. Translate Latmar to the people.
Latmar, getting beaten with sticks.
No, but he said that my language is known. Haryanvi is known as Latmar. That's what you said. Do you see the connection? Now, people who have never heard Haryanvi, you'll be like, what? How can a language be associated with beating of a stick? Because people who know Haryanvi, they would understand. Yes? Why? Because when two people who are from, close friends also Haryanvi, if they are speaking, like actual, their tone, that we say Thet Haryanvi, like actual Haryanvi, people will think they're fighting. But they're not fighting. They're best of friends. They're literally, Langotia Yar, as they say. Okay? That is another Langotia Yar. Keep thinking of these words, okay? Langotia Yar. Translate Langotia Yar in English. Okay, I know. We've tried that. Exactly. All right. So now what I'm trying to tell you is that this thing, your understanding of the culture makes you understand why that Haryanvi is being called as Latmar language. Okay. So some people might take it negatively, but it's not to be taken negatively. It is something which they are proud of. It is how they are. They are very happy. They're very loud. They don't keep themselves quiet. Whereas you have another state people where two friends are talking and very pyar se, with so much of love and affection, you think that, oh, they're very good, they're just having a good time, but they're actually arguing. But that language does not have that tone wherein, they go into that loud mode, so you can't make out. So that is how language and culture, with the tone that he's talking about, all those things, those obviously matter. I'll go further. Now, I was trying to think of making you people understand the different words that were used in the title. Okay, so let's try answering. What is culture? What is language? What is translation? And why is social linguistics important? I'm not going to try to go in because ma'am has already done the ground job, but quickly. So culture, obviously, the shared beliefs, the traditions, the religion, the values, the social norms, the customs and behaviors of a particular group that shapes the way that you think and you communicate. Okay, and culture is the background against which language and meaning are created. Now everybody, I want to tell you, everybody asks me, which state are you from? Earlier I was from UP. Okay, so when I was a kid, when I was in the 4th standard, my school was having its silver jubilee. I was in the largest school for Indians in the Gulf. It was known as Indian High School. If you ever go to Dubai, you can say that I know somebody from this school. So in that, my teacher called me and she said, Sandesha, we are going to make you an Assamese girl. And I was like, Assamese? I am from UP. I'm a UP girl. She said, no, Assamese. You go home, you tell your mother. So I went home and I told my mother. I was very upset. I said, Mummy, my teacher made me an Assamese girl, but I should be a UP girl. So my mother smiled and she said, Beta, don't worry. And she opened up a diary. It was an India diary. And she showed me the picture of an Assamese girl. And she said, look, they look like us. We look like them. This is how you explain to a 4th standard kid. Come on, yeah. And then she was like, so she made me a skirt kind of thing and a top. And then I had to go on the stage and I had to say that I'm an Assamese girl. And I never understood till I came to India for my graduation that why I had been made an Assamese girl. All right. So obviously your physical traits, obviously they do affect a lot when people are, trying to pinpoint and make. So your language and culture, where does this come in play? So when we are talking about culture, so when you talk about now UP becoming Uttarakhand, When I tell people I'm from Uttarakhand, they expect me to have the Uttarakhandi traditions. Now, my traditions are not Uttarakhandi, honestly speaking. My traditions are from my community, which is different. So, just because you are from a state, you might be from Bihar. Bihar has 38 districts, but the 38 districts, they might have their own traditions which are different. Because there are people who say that we are Brahmins, but we are Brahmins, but we eat fish, because for them fish is like very important, and even when a bride comes, she is first given a fish. That is in their tradition. Whereas in other places it's like, oh my god, how could you do that? I'm like different kind of Brahmin. So everybody has their own thing as per their areas and regions, right? Now, going back, you have a, oh yeah, this is there, right? Can you put this so that I don't have to keep coming back? इसको निकाल के लगा दूं. Okay, so now what is language? Language, as you know, it's a system of communication using symbols, spoken, written, and non-verbal. Okay? Yeah, okay. So it represents thoughts, emotions, and identity. Yesterday, I saw ma'am's video on YouTube, and ma'am mentioned something about sign language. Okay? And she said something, I think a question or something about whether sign language is a language and whether it has any. So this is Indian, this is sign and language. I am the official person in this university to create awareness about Indian sign language. So I would like everyone to do this. Indian, this is the sign for Indian. This is the sign for sign. And this is the sign for language. Okay, good. Now, why am I telling you this? Because Indian Sign Language is a language. It has a grammar, it has a vocabulary, and it has a structure. Okay? For example, if you want to say, what is your name? You will say, name, this is the sign for name, your what? Naam, tumhara kya? Okay? So, this is what I want to tell you, that yes, there are even there. Now, if you look at it, why did ma'am have culture coming before language? When a child who is deaf is born, the child is not hearing the language. The child is first getting acquainted to the culture. This is the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, I chose culture as the first one before language. Though I told you language and culture are interrelated. A deaf child is getting acclimatized to a deaf culture. Now, everyone, what is deaf culture? How is it different from, we are all hearing, you are a hearing person, not a deaf person, okay? So how is your culture different from a deaf person's culture? Think for 30 seconds. How is your world different from a deaf person's world? In simple words.
Sound.
Sound, yes. So what's about sound? Give me an example.
So I think our worldview, the way we think and perceive things, are also shaped by their sound. So a deaf person would form opinions about things in absence of a sound.
Absence of sound. So simple thing. You right now, if there is a fire somewhere, you would all hear the bell. If we had a deaf person or we had all deaf people around here, then they wouldn't be able to hear the bell. For them, the red light has to be placed. When somebody rings their doorbell, they can't hear it. They can't see their phones, right? They can't hear their phones. They can only see it moving, vibrating, or they can look at the light blinking. That is their culture. Okay? There are many other things. You can't just call out a deaf person who is walking like this. You have to go and you have to tap them. And you can't just touch them anywhere. As for deaf culture, you have to tap them either here or here. Okay? Some people have the habit of tapping people on the head. They do that. They don't even realize what they're doing. That is complete disrespect, because that is human ethics. These are basic things. But I wanted to explain to you why I put culture before language. Once the deaf person as a baby grows up and realizes that something is missing, because as he said, it is very difficult for the deaf person, then what does he or she, you all, what did you say for water? When you wanted water, have you ever seen a child? You won't remember your own words. For a child, what does a child say for water? Mum. Very good. Why do you say mum? Why do you say mum? Why don't you say zu? Why are you saying mum? Because, use your brains. Child is born, doesn't have teeth. And people who know linguistics or even the language people, your entire articulators, they play a role. If you lose your teeth, the first two teeth, you will not be able to pronounce particular sounds, right? Particular sounds. So the child, ma is easier. Pa, ba, those are easier. So Now, when the deaf child, when they're growing up, they can't say mum, mum, mum. So they are doing either this or they're doing this, whatever they want, different signs. Now, Indian Sign Language has become a language that has become standardized for the deaf people in our country. So that a person from Kerala who's deaf and a person from Kashmir who's deaf, when they come and learn in a deaf school, then they will pick up the same signs. Okay? All right. Now, this is the power of language, whether it is spoken language, remember, or whether it is sign language. Now, these are the languages around the world, a few of them. We have many, many, many languages. Just wanted to show you, try to remind you, try to get you out of the world, out of this particular classroom. Then India itself. In India, how many language families do we have? 5. Which are they?
There is Indo-Aryan.
Yes. How much percent? How much percent? Okay, all right. Yes, very good. No, wait, hold on, go slow, because there are people who are not, knowing this. So Indo-Aryan, she said, okay, Indo-Aryan, around 71% of the languages are Indo-Aryan. And which are the languages in Indo-Aryan? Hindi, Sanskrit. Yes. Yes. Kumauni, Gadwali, Nepali, Odia, Bengali, Gujarati, Marathi. Yes. Chhattisgarhi, Sadri. These are part of Indo-Aryan language family. Okay. Second, there is nothing like first and second. We are going by the number. Okay. Dravidian. Yes. Which are the ones? Tamil is the oldest. Kannada, Telugu. Malayalam is the youngest. Okay. They are 19%. Tulu. Yes. There are many other indigenous languages also. Third, we have Tibeto-Burman. Tibeto-Burman. They are Tibeto-Burman language family. Ranglo comes under that, my language. Most of the border languages that are bordering China, Tibet, the northeast, okay, Himachal Pradesh, the Himalayas, the Himalayan languages who are very close to the borders, they are generally Tibeto-Burman. 1.4%. Okay, 1.4. Okay, and then you have Austroasiatic. Okay, and then very good. Great Andamanese, those languages. What's your name? Okay, all right. So now that you've been acquainted to the thousands and thousands of other languages that we have, as you can see, how does your own language reflect your cultural background? Does it reflect? Yes? He already gave you a very good example. Okay? Haryanvi people, if they actually speaking in Thet Haryanvi, they have grown up to that area, not a Haryanvi who's born and raised in Delhi who hasn't heard Haryanvi. You have in America a lot of Malayalis, lot of Tamilians who are now in California. They are born there, but their parents are working from morning to evening. They see their parents only during the weekends, and they, the Mexican nanny or, Spanish-speaking nanny is taking care of them. They speak Spanish better than they speak Malayalam. I know because I have friends who are telling me this. So, in fact, they think that their mother tongue is Spanish, whereas their mother tongue is not Spanish, even if they are fluent, because that's not their ethnic identity. Until they grow up as an adult and claim to say that, yes, Spanish is my mother tongue, it's a different thing. So I'm trying to correct that entire thought process. Don't think that the first language that you're speaking is going to be your mother tongue. Don't think you have to be fluent in your mother tongue. I know I'm breaking some barriers out here. You people are getting a little bit shocked, ma'am kya bol rahi hai? But trust me, at the age of 21, when I learned this, so I thought I should pass on the knowledge. Because your children in the future, if you go to Europe, to Germany, and you're going to work, and your child is ending up speaking German better than his Hindi or whatever other mother tongue, then you'll realize why. Now, this one, I just wanted to give you an example. You know what this is? Yeah. Now, are you Kashmiri? You know. Okay. So, how would you translate this to somebody if you didn't have this image? If you didn't have the image, and as she told you, this is the de jure, how would you tell somebody if you are reading a text about a bride wearing a de jure, okay, or receiving a de jure? Then how would you tell? You would say earring. Looks like an earring. It's not an earring. It's not just an earring. Well, actually, it's an ornament which is worn around the ears, but it's more than that. It's not even describing it. This de jure is not just an earring. Just like a Mangal Sutra is not just a chain, okay, or a necklace, it is way beyond it. There is a cultural importance to it. So remember, words are not just words that you're translating. There is a responsibility that each and every one of you who wants to become a translator has to remember. You can't say this is an earring. This is way beyond it. How you explain it is going to come later on. Now, okay, this is so culture and language. I'm trying to, sorry, just one second. Where is this? Oh, sorry, yeah. Just give me a second. Sorry. Do I remove it and put it again? अच्छा नहीं अभी यहाँ पे blank आ गया आ रहा है I think आ रहा है वो HDMI केबल फिर से लगाओ ये ब्लू वाला ये उसको फिर से निकाल के लगाओ ना फिर से निकाल के लगाया इसने सॉरी कहते there's a movie there's a story ना बड़े बड़े देशों में छोटी छोटी बातें होती रहती है so बड़े बड़े सेशंस में भी छोटी छोटी बातें होती रहती है okay so this is one of them so as I was telling you about culture and language this was just to show you pictures there is this anthropologist his name is good enough okay नाम ही ऐसा है good enough alright in fact yesterday very interestingly I got a particular video on Instagram which was about how Bandyopadyas and Chattopadyas became Chatterjees and Banerjees okay how names evolve okay so same way this particular person's name is good enough कुछ हो गया है क्या अच्छा उसकी वजह से तो ये निकाल दो फिर doesn't matter फिर से ऑन किए okay now it's it. Can people online do they have anything to ask can we hear them also just to I hope they're listening and not doing something else उससे मत करो वो फिर वापस ऑन ऑफ करके इसमें मैं इसको रुक जाइए दूसरा ये कनेक्ट कर दूसरा I'll do this now okay I'll just put this again उससे नहीं है रणवीर उससे मत करो इसमें लगा इससे हो जाएगा He's giving another connector फिर वो पूरा इसमें just put this get this okay अब वो लगा एक और था उसी के साथ लगा वो सॉल्यूशन ठीक आ गया ना स्क्रीन पे आ गया कुछ स्क्रीन पे आ गया ओके ऑलराइट एवरीवन रुकावट के लिए खेद है ओके Culture and language good enough in 1981 asserts that culture in a society is whatever a person has to know or believe in order to operate in a manner acceptance to its members and to do so in any role that they accept for any one of themselves. For example, there are people who claim to be of a particular religion, let's say, okay? So all of you will think that this religion people will have the same belief how the man, how the woman came into the world. Correct? Yes or no? Yes? Okay. Don't be surprised when you say, oh, you're from the same religion. I know that in your society, men and women, oh, let's take her as an example. She comes to India, she meets this person who is from the same religion as mine on paper and says, oh, She tells me, oh, I know from your, from your religious texts that how man and women came. I said, no, in my community, it's not like that. In my community, man came from an egg and woman came from another egg. Okay? That's how we have in my community. That's what I'm trying to tell you. On paper, people can be from the same religion, same community, not same community, but same religion, same certain beliefs and all, but there will be variations. Okay? It is your own personal beliefs of the community, what they believe in, what they have passed on from one generation to other. Okay? According to Vygotsky in 1962, as cited in Noonan in 2010, language plays a crucial role in cognitive development, at least from the time the child promotes language competence. Why did I bring about a child? Because, as you know, he is a psycholinguist, okay? And he has done immense work on child psychology, all right? Why is child psychology, by the way, if any of you know, why is child language acquisition an important subject? Why is child language acquisition, like how a child acquires a language, why is that important? Why is that research important? Why, somebody said he's from Korean, right? Japanese, sorry. So the person is from Japanese. Why is it important to know how a child is picking up Japanese language? Because the same mistake that a child does while picking up Japanese language is the same mistake he will do as an adult picking up Japanese. You understand? Classic case. When we are learning English, we are saying what? Past tense of dance is danced. Play is played. Sing, sang, not singed. Okay? So we are like, okay, go is not goed, it's went, right? We learned it because this is not our first language, it's not our mother tongue. Now the same mistake that we are making as adults, or even when we are learning, the same mistake a child is doing, even if he or she is a native speaker. There the child is playing and saying, I go it. The parents laugh. They say, not go it, went. This is the reason why child language acquisition is so important for adult language acquisition also, especially for people to learn. Okay, a tip for all of you, many of you are from language. Now, this is why his work is so important. And remember one thing, you all have heard about the critical hypothesis. You have heard about the particular age when children, they are like a sponge. You can teach them 3 or 4 languages aram se. The child who is there in California can pick up Spanish, Hindi, Malayalam. If the mother is Hindi speaker, father is Malayalam speaker, and then if the teacher in school is Korean and telling a little bit of Korean, the child is a sponge, will pick up, okay? And whatever he or she is comfortable in, will take it up further. So, okay. So the relationship between language and culture, according to Fuller and Wado in 2015, there are several possible relationships between language and culture. One is the social structure may either influence or determine the linguistic structure and or the behavior. Second point, the linguistic structure and or behavior may either influence or determine the social structure or worldview. Remember this. When you were growing up, your parents said, "Beta, ऐसे मत करना, बर्तन को उल्टा मत करना." हम उल्टा करके खाना नहीं बनाते. I don't know if anybody knows this. Okay, हम तो सीधा ही खाते. Okay, let me give you a better one. My best friends are Malayali. I went to their house and I saw them eating chor. Chor means rice. So, you know, have you ever seen Malayalis eating rice? They eat completely like this, like a ball, and then they eat it. It's so tasty. I came home and I did that. And my mother said, don't ever do that. In our community, it is considered very bad because we make balls of rice only when somebody dies and then we leave it. Correct? Okay. So, look at the cultural difference. Same country, Indian. She'll say, oh, you're Indian. You must be also eating like my friend. No, we're different. Because if it's our culture, right? So, this is what I mean. A third possible relationship is that the influence is bi-directional. That means I picked up the Malayali culture from her. She also picked up a bit of my culture. So this was bi-directional. Now, whether her parents allowed her or not, that's a different story. And language and society may influence each other. Fourth point, to assume that there is no relationship at all between linguistic structure and social structure and that each is independent of the other is not possible, okay? All right, so let me go ahead. I'm going to welcome few of the faculty who are here. Thank you for coming. Now, Language as a cultural carrier. Language reflects cultural values and traditions. All right. Example, Inuit. Now, this is a very classic example. People have been constantly saying this. First, I thought I shouldn't say the same example, but then I realized that there are people who are not necessarily linguists out here, language people. So, like somebody's from political science over here. So, I think I should explain to you. Inuits are people, they are the ones who make the igloos, right? And igloo for them means house, okay, which we call igloo. Igloo means ice picks. For them, it's actually a house. And by the way, just in case you people don't know, igloos are not their permanent homes, mind you. Igloos are their temporary homes because when they are hunting from place to place, that's when they make the igloos. And why do they have many words for snow or ice? Not only them, from my community itself, we have 4 or 5 words for ice. Why? Obviously, because of the seasonal changes. Do you know what is that called? Icicles? Yes? Icicles are the ice. Okay, when you open your refrigerator, you can see all those like little ice which is like over there. Imagine them like a spear, like a sword. That is an icicle. It's hanging, let's say, over here. Now, when it's winter, it'll be stuck over there. But as the thaw starts coming, that means it starts melting. When you are going down, imagine you're in Uttarakhand, where it is completely Himalaya, okay? And slowly it's getting warmer, and you are living in those wooden houses which have first floor and second floor, but you have only one entrance from the door in the middle. Whenever we go down, everybody in the house will say, I'll explain in Hindi, okay? Tilin ko dekh kar nikalna. That means be careful, because if it falls on your head, it can pierce through your. So this is the reason why that word tilin is so important. Then you have another word for when you want to use ice for basically making water out of it, because we also go high up in the mountain. Now, we only have 5, 6, but Inuits have many, because they have, depending on the particular temperature, what they're using it for water, for making their igloos, or for their refrigerators. They actually have their own refrigerators. They also have refrigerators. They make it out of ice. Okay. Now, cultural specific words are hard to translate. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you an activity. Don't worry. I already warned you. This is going to be interactive. You all are going to be given a minute to think of one word in your language which you think is hard to translate. I will give you examples, so don't worry. No tension about it. Now, what is translation? So I'm going to keep it very simple because ma'am already gave you the technical details. The process of transferring meaning from one language to another is translation. Okay? Cultural adaptation plays a key role in that. So it's not just, okay, I said the meaning, this is this. I want the culture transmission also to take place in that. Now, how do they interconnect? Again, as I kept telling you, Bhasha and Sanskriti. Language expresses culture, and translation is doing the mediation work between them. So, translation as a cultural mediation. Translation is not just about converting words, it's about conveying cultural context. What is the translator's role over here? Bridging the cultural gaps and preserving the nuances. Okay, now let me give you an example. In the last 1 month, actually for the last, I think 4 or 5 years, I have been part of a committee where we are translating words from English to Hindi. All right. The first time I was invited to that committee, and I was the only one with black hair. Rest everyone had white hair. So you can imagine, they were like very experienced people. We were like 7, 8. They were mathematicians, they were scientists, they were engineers, they were Hindi, obviously Hindi gurus, the Vidwans. And then I was there in the corner sitting over there. The only lady, by the way. Okay, that's another thing. So they had 3,000 words that they had to translate within 1 week, 5 days. Okay, morning to evening we would be translating. So initially, first 15-20 minutes, no one was looking at me. No one was asking me anything. So I also didn't want to, interrupt. I wanted to wait and watch when they'll ask me. Suddenly, one word came. The word was receptacle. RECAPTCLE. Everyone, receptacle. Okay? Does anybody know what is a receptacle? And by the way, this is a scientific, just to give you an idea. You know it in Italian में? अच्छा मैम, आप उसको बता सकते हैं कि वो है क्या? उसका definition आप बता सकते हैं? Very good. डिब्बा. हाँ, container. Like a. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good. Good. Container. Good. सही कह रही है मैम. Okay. They all put dibba and they went ahead. So I was like, actually, yeah, they put dibba. Dibba was the word that they put for in Hindi. And this is for scientists. It was being used by science people and engineers and all. So I thought basically DRDO, all these people, because it was used for rockets and all the words, terminologies. So I was quietly looking at it and I thought, ek bar main bhi to dekhu, because they went directly for the direct translation. They didn't go for the definition. So I just quickly googled over there what is a receptacle in that subject, in that area. Guess what? It was written, there was a nice image also. Receptacle was basically like an antenna. Because you know hibiscus shoe flower? Shoe flower has those two. That is also a receptacle. So I quietly raised my hand and said, excuse me, sir. And everybody saying, हाँ. I said, sir, एक बार पीछे जाइए और सामने वाले साइंटिस्ट को जरा पूछिए कि जरा डिस्क्राइब तो करे कि what is a receptacle in there for them, for the engineers and the scientists. Then they decided, they said something like this. So I said, you mean like a shoe flower का ऐसा दो antenna, जैसे bees का दो antenna? They said yes. I said that is not a dibba. Dibba is container. That's the power of a translator. इस बात के लिए तालियां तो दो. Yes. After that they realized why a bhasha vigyanik was called. तब तक they didn't say, they thought अरे इसकी क्या जरूरत है. After that they always checked with me. So all of you future linguists in whatever area, remember, you people have the power of English and Hindi and your third whatever language. When you go abroad, the Korean, the Japanese, the Arabic or French person out here, okay, that is what you need to do. Okay, all right. Now, have you ever encountered a translation that changed the meaning of a text? What was the impact? Think of this question. Have you ever encountered a translation that changed the meaning of a text? What was the impact? She gave an example of Godan. I saw that. Godan ka?
No, I spoke about the Bible, for example.
Bible, and you showed a picture of Godan and you said that the translation was, that was not a correct. Summary, it was summary. Yes, summary. Yes, it was summary. Okay, anyone else? Anyone would like to say about any translation they felt that no, it didn't give justice?
One time UPSC asked a question, she said,
very good.
Steel plant to ispat ka podha.
Very good, yes. Just say it again.
A steel plant in English,
yeah.
And in Hindi translation, ispat ka podha.
हाँ, स्पार्क का पौधा, वो बेसिकली स्टील को उन्होंने ट्रांसलेट कर दिया. Yes, I agree. Okay, definitely I understand that. Okay, for example, it'll come later. I was going to give you an example later, which is, agar just now I told you, right? CDAC Noida, we were translating words for 1 week. Crowdsourcing, funding, right? Crowdsourcing. Okay, तो crowdsourcing का हिंदी का अनुवाद कीजिए, क्या होगा? Crowdsourcing का, हाँ, crowdsourcing का हिंदी अनुवाद कीजिए. Google Translator में डालोगे तो भीड़ कहेगा. Now, is it भीड़? It is not भीड़. It is basically Jansotra. Jansotra, basically public. And then I'll give you the exact one that we had given. It was Jansotra Sankalan Vyavhar. Okay? Crowdsourcing business or something, it was like that. So Vyavhar was for that. But the main thing was this. Okay? That's what I'm telling you. We translators, kitna bhi log kahe ki machine, at the end of the day, the machine is machine. You are important, your value is there as long as you are a good translator. It will take ages for the artificial intelligence to catch up with our human intelligence. Okay, now the interconnection of culture, language and translation. Culture, already mentioned to you, values, the traditions, the social norms. Language, the communication system, the dialects, the idioms. Translation, mediating meaning, cultural adaptation. Okay, ये जो खुसर पुसर हो रही है किस बात के लिए? चंदे? अच्छा, वो चंदा कलेक्ट करना, right? Is that what you're saying? Crowdsourcing के लिए. तो बात ये है, चंदा कलेक्ट करना हमने भी कहा था, but चंदा कलेक्ट करना is very informal in that particular part as compared to making it formal. They wanted it to be very formal, very शुद्ध, और crowd को भी they wanted कि वो खाली चंदा donation नहीं है. Donation होता तो चंदा बोल भी देते, पर क्योंकि वो crowdsourcing है, they wanted that public. They wanted that importance of that public coming. तो तभी उन्होंने उसको जनसूत्र कर दिया. Yeah, he's right. Actually, that's a very important point. Crowdsourcing is not just money. Excuse me, जिन्होंने चंदा बोला था, crowdsourcing is not just money. Crowdsourcing किसी भी चीज के लिए हो सकता है. Like you want to help somebody, तो आप सबका पूरे जनता से उनका हेल्प ले रहे हैं. So हाँ, so that's the reason why. Okay, good this thing. Now everybody, this is the part of social linguistics. तो टाइटल आज का टॉक में क्या था? कल्चर था, लैंग्वेज था, ट्रांसलेशन था और सोशल लिंग्विस्टिक्स था. So why social linguistics? For people who are not linguists or not to do with language, the political science people. The study of how language is used within society, that is what is social linguistics. Within that, there are few things that you might want to know. Dialect, ethnolect and sociolect. Okay, dialect many of you would have heard of. For example, Hindi का ही ले लो. यहाँ पे you go to buy sabzi, one person will say tinda and the other person will say kundru. Not kundru, sorry. There's another word for it. Okay, when you go to Noida, it's one word. When you come to Gurgaon, it's another word. Okay, for tinda, I can't remember the second one. Sorry, but that's how I mean. Okay, so there are variations. So a variety that displays unique characteristics of vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation, which are often influenced by social class and or geographical region and is thus regionally or socially distinguished. Example, Manipuri has standard Meitei dialect as well as the Chakpa dialect. Okay, any Manipuri over here? Okay, if you have Manipuri friends, you can understand this because you will have two Manipuri friends and you will say, अच्छा तुम दोनों Manipuri तो दोनों का same भाषा होगा. But it's not necessarily, as I already explained to you. I'm Uttarakhandi, but mine is different from the Kumaunis and the Gadwalis. Okay, now ethnolect, a variety of language that is associated with a particular ethnic group. Okay, if you are from a particular state, doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that whatever is the state language will be your language, your community's language will be yours. For example, Chicago English, African American Vernacular English, etc. Then sociolect. What is sociolect? This is a language whose variety is spoken by a certain social group or class. Sociolects can be influenced by a wide range of social factors, including factors like socioeconomic status, the education, the profession, the age group, the religion, the gender, etc. For example, New York accent you have a New York, like if you go to New York or somebody tells you I'm a New Yorker, one New Yorker can have a complete different accent and another New Yorker can be completely having slangs, jargons, more usage of that as compared to the other person. Now, social linguistics in translation. Now, what is the role of that? Nira in 2012 defined linguistics and social linguistics as useful ways of comprehending and viewing the distinctive roles of language. Linguistics is comprised of the two complementary ways of viewing language, whereas social linguistics is more concerned with the uses of language as well as the values associated with such functions. Hence, social linguistics analyzes levels or registers of language from highly ritual to intimate competition between dialects and between languages, the growth and death of languages, the roles of jargon, slang, and verbal innovations, gender differences, and the abuse of language. Can language be abused? No? Language can be abused. Don't you know all the galis that you people give out here? Certain people, they have to give the galis with reference to a particular gender only. I don't even have to say it. Okay? So the power is out there. Try giving the same, I mean, this particular language has it, and in Hindi you have it and give it in English. You all know. You all watch Netflix, right? Have you seen the movies where the gali comes in Hindi and below what is written over there? That's the translation that you're getting. All right? Now, a translator or interpreter would be more capable of understanding how social linguistic features become relevant to the entire range of communication, such as phonology, lexicon, syntax, and discourse, once they overcome the mistake of thinking language as merely words and grammar, and after they recognize the wide range of functions that language perform. By the way, the political science person, the two of you, right? One of you. Do you know, by the way, why did you choose this particular?
I'm from political science, but my research is on Dogri folk narrative.
Very good. I'll be talking to you because CDAC Noida is looking for you. They're looking for somebody who's at Dogri.
Basically, I'm just saying that how in Dogri folk narrative there is a politics of feminine emotion.
Very good.
So for that purpose, I'm here.
Very good. Excellent.
Literature.
Are you a Dogri speaker, by the way? Very good. Excellent. Because they just gone to Kashmir to find more people.
Because the moment you said that uska impact kya hota hai, so there was a song I was going to give example.
Please give.
Yeah. For example was this, that there is a particular kind of folk song that is Pakham. अब ये जो गाना आता है इसको विदाउट इंस्ट्रूमेंट गाते हैं, इस पर्टिकुलर ले में गाया जाता है विदाउट इंस्ट्रूमेंट. But the problem is this, that someone translated in this way that it is just a song. So people started singing it like with instrument. और उससे उसका पूरा cultural meaning distort हो गया.
Very good. Give her a round of applause. She has given you a perfect example. What has she told you? The people who said it's a song, you didn't just spoil a word. You spoiled something for the remaining generations to come. अच्छा गाना है, तब तो लगा दो तबला, डगर डगर डगर, and then the entire that thing of it is gone. That's how we distort something so beautiful. This is the reason why take the responsibility of a translator to that level. Don't keep it to this. All right, let's go with this one. This is the poster I was talking about. It's half of the poster, but don't worry. So this is the title of my project right now, which is called Adaptation of Indigenous and Local Knowledge Systems and FinTech Solution. FinTech is basically to do with financial transactions, okay? FinTech Solutions for Comprehensive Tribal Development in Chhattisgarh, okay? This is a DST project. IIT Roorkee has the PI and 9 professors from IIT. I was invited in IIT Billai to talk about my project, which sir was talking about, okay, which is for my community. So somebody said, you don't have a linguist. How will you collect language? Because language is integral to the community, which is only having oral language. By the way, Kuruk speakers only have oral language. Their text they're developing now. And if any of you think that a language can't survive unless it has a text, you are so mistaken, my dear. Okay? My own language is an oral language. Now, the next generation, we are trying to think of different ways because WhatsApp, the older generation uses Hindi, and the younger generation uses Roman script and Devanagari, right? But the thing is, they don't do justice because many sounds are lost. Do you know why sounds are lost? People who are here from Arabic, they will know this. In Arabic, you don't have pa and you don't have g, okay? So my father's name is Gopal, and always the Arab would say Jobal. Pepsi is not Pepsi. Pepsi is Bepsi, okay? So Alif, Ba, Ta, Sa, Zim, Ha, Ka, Dal, Zal, Ra, Za, Sin, Shin, Swe, Dwe, Twe, Zwe, An, Gan, Fa, Qaf, La, Mim, Noon, Ha, Wa, Ya. Where do you hear G and P, right? Now, the other thing, same way, Korean gurus are sitting over here. Yeah, there are certain, yes, other. And there are certain sounds in Arabic that we don't have in Hindi. The glottal sound, which comes from here, that we don't have it in Hindi. We don't have it in Sanskrit. Because people who read the Quran, they have it in Arabic. Therefore, in Urdu also you have the kh coming over there. Yes. And if you ever meet a Korean or you end up teaching a Korean, like I had to teach Korean engineers who had come to India. They were here for learning science and I had to teach them the English part. La and Ra was a problem for them. Sir, am I right? Or the students out here? La and Ra is a problem for the Korean speakers because their listening is an issue. Yes, sir? Yes, sir. Because it's not in their sound, sir? Yes. Okay. So how, even making them try to roll. Do you know, if you were in school and your teacher told you, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. This is not just a nursery rhyme. It is for making you roll your tongue. Row, row, row. Okay. So I used to make 30-year-old, 25-year-old Koreans say, row, row, row. Then I would tell them, imagine you are starting a bike. Grr, grr, grr. You know, you have to make them basically use their articulators. Okay. Anyway, I don't know if you can see the pictures, if they're clear or not. Just to show to you. Now, this is the interesting thing, and remember this when I tell you later, okay? Remember what I told you? Similar cultures, traditions, religious beliefs, and I told you one person can be from the same state but have different religions. Chhattisgarh is a classic example of it, okay? Jharkhand is also another good example of it. The communities, the indigenous communities, the Santalis and Odia, this is Chhattisgarh, this is Jharkhand, this is Orissa, and this is Bihar over here, or Madhya Pradesh. In one part, they are Christian, and the same part across the road in the other state, they are Hindus. Okay? Because it's just across the state, it could be whatever reasons, but they're speaking that language. Okay? So remember that. So these are a few things that we were doing out there. Now, just to give you again, languages may have some words and concepts that cannot be directly translated. Like she gave you an example of it. Now in Manipuri, my project assistant in Manipuri, so she gave me this example. She said, Madam, experience word is we cannot have a direct word for it. What is it in Hindi? Anubhav would be a good word, but Manipuri में जब आपको translate करना पड़ेगा वो नहीं आ पाता. It takes time, so they had to develop something. Otherwise, it was this: Hira mamagi, matangda, nena karabagi, akhangba. I'm sorry, please forgive me if the Manipuris are listening. Another word, aeroplane. Aeroplane के लिए हिंदी में क्या है? हवाई जहाज. और दूसरा तो क्या बोलते हैं? विमान है. क्या कौन सा विमान है? पुष्पक विमान है. वायु कौन सा? वायु विमान. ठीक है. सो यू हैव वर्ड्स. जिसने बनाया उसने तब बनाया. हमारे यहाँ पहले एरोप्लेन नहीं था, वो तो पहले पुष्पक विमान की बात अलग है, बट राइट नाउ तो एरोप्लेन तो बाद में बना. सो दे मेड इट अकॉर्डिंगली. नाउ फॉर द मणिपुरीज, they how do they come up with a word for aeroplane? They came up with this, which is nang doltak ta paiba chatang bagi pambe oiba potsak. For no, it's potsak. पुष्पक का ही पोत्सक होगा या तो. But guess what it means? It basically means something which is going up in the air that is taking people with it. Okay? Basically सब कुछ का combination मिला के खिचड़ी बना के वो कर दिया. Understood? So that's how it is. Now कुरुक से लाती हूँ. Livestock have different names depending on their maturity and how they are used. Now imagine this. IIT रुड़की के लोग जा रहे थे to collect to basically जो project है. The project is about going and helping the community to do what? Selling. वो कुछ बनाते हैं and then they are supposed to sell it. तो ऐप कैसे यूज करें? How to connect with the people. अब सोचो, language is so important and they did not have a linguist. So when I came into the picture, I was the first one from my team to go to collect the data. Just to sell a pig, because they, by the way, pig is very important for them, okay? So for them to sell a pig itself has different names. Why? Because if you are selling a pig, which is a fertile male pig, you have to call it kuru. If you are selling a castrated male pig, what castration means? That no longer can that pig give another pig, right? You cannot have, right? So basically that's a banda. All right. Then you have buhi. Buhi is a female pig. And then you have a sedka, which is a male piglet, chota wala. Then you have a kaddi, which is a choti pig. Okay. So each of this, now fintech में कितना important है? App में you want to buy a pig, अब क्या खरीदना है? So you have 5 words over there. Okay, just to give you an example. Now in Hindi, this is something which all of you would know. Family and relations have more nuances compared to English. In outside, auntie is for everyone, right? But in India, नहीं, हमारी तो बुआ है, चाची है, ये है, मामी है, मौसी है. All of them are aunties, and then you have to explain them कौन सी वाली auntie, right? Okay, brothers के लिए आप लोगों का क्या है हिंदी में? भैया, we have elder brother is da, बड़े भैया या दादा, not dada, right? And छोटे भैया, छोटा भैया, भाई, या नाम से पुकार लिया. In my language, we have many words. Okay? So if you have the eldest brother, in my language, Ranglo. What is my language? Ranglo. Pod means big, Meed means small. Everybody remember this, okay? Pod means big, Meed means small. Hya means brother. Everybody open your mouth and say, Hya. Hya means brother. So, the eldest brother, if before, obviously I will be born later, the elder brothers will be born before me. If there is one elder brother before me, so simple, I can call him just Hya. Hya means elder brother. But if I have 2 elder brothers, then it will come Poya. Because this is interesting. Initially, we say Poya, wahi Poya jo aap khate ho, wahi Poya. Now the thing is, I was wondering how come Poya bana? It is actually Pod and Hya का combination मिलके पोया वो ड और ह निकल जाता है because वो चिपक जाता है. ठीक है? Okay, पोया. If there is a second elder brother, then that becomes a मीधिया, which becomes मिया. So मीधिया नहीं बोल सकते तो मिया हो जाता है. Okay? तो बड़ा bigger elder brother and younger elder brother. उसके बाद, if you have younger brothers, if you have only one, then it is nunnu. Nunnu means छोटा भाई. And if you have a pod, and there are people who, like my cousin brothers and sisters, they don't take the names of their brothers and sisters. They actually call them Poya, Mia, Nunu, Ponu, whatever. Okay? So that is how it is so important in that particular.
If you look at what people call Balish Hindi, there is Anuja Nagaraj.
Yes, correct. Yes, correct. bilkul sahi kaha. Yes.
There is also this term in vernaculars called Chutku Badku.
हाँ वो तो घर का वो हो गया. Okay, everyone, this one is very debatable, what I'm going to tell you, because many people, many linguists don't agree to this. Okay, now I'm not getting into that part, but I'm just reading it out. Every language is a vast pattern system different from others, in which are culturally ordained the forms and categories by which the personality not only communicates but also analyzes nature, notices or neglects types of relationship and phenomena, channels his reasoning and builds the house of his consciousness. This is the gentleman Benjamin Leaforth. Okay, all right, he's a very well-known linguist. All right, Sapir-Whorf, you might have heard of it, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So he is the part of that. He is the Whorf. Okay. Now, question time. Can you think of a word in your language that is hard to translate? Okay. I will start. One example. There is a word in my language called naso. Naso. Now you people think of translating it. I will tell you what naso is. Naso is, now imagine you are in the mountain where there is no road. It takes you 1 week to come walking from that area to down, and then from there another 2 days to come to Delhi. Okay, imagine the place. Okay, so when you want to send something for your child who is studying in college, you will send something. कुछ भी बना के, मिठाई बना के, सबको आता है घर से. But for you it's easier. Train से आ गया, plane से आ गया, road से आ गया. For us it is carried by someone. Okay, that is an extremely important thing. So when somebody is leaving the village, they will say, I am leaving tomorrow. Do you want to send any naso? Okay, that is, so naso is not just a gift. Naso is more than a gift. It is something which is very personal. It can be anything. It can be dawai is also naso. Paisa is also naso. Jewelry is also naso. But meant specifically for that person by his or her loved one. Okay, banao word. That's one exercise. Now forget about this one. Make one for yourself and tell. Give me a word from your language. Which language are you talking? Malvi. Acha, very good. Tell her which. Tell her the state. Tell her the Malwa region. Okay.
तो शादी के टाइम पे हथेरा होता है, लाइक वो गिफ्ट जैसा नहीं होता. वो जब कन्यादान होता है तो दूल्हा और दुल्हन के ऐसे पैर थाली में रखते हैं और उसके बाद उनके पैरों पे जो बड़े बड़े लोग हैं वो सब कुछ चांदी का सोने का कुछ चढ़ाते हैं. वो गिफ्ट मतलब गिफ्ट जैसा है, बेसिकली गिफ्ट नहीं है.
It's beyond. It has a lot of significance. तो अगर हथेरा बोला ना, हथेरा, हाथ से दिया हुआ हथेरा, just हाथ वाला. But you don't know the etymology. Etymology is the origin of a word, by the way. Okay, everyone say the word hatera. Pronounce it hatera. Okay, जिंदगी में आपने पहली बार मालवा region का कोई word बोला होगा. Okay, it's important. See, you have to respect your own language and culture. You have to respect the people. You are so lucky that she exposed you to a new word. इस उम्र में आकर एक नया वर्ड सीखना बहुत बड़ी बात होती है. ओके, और मेरी उम्र में आकर तो और भी बड़ी बात होती है. ओके, सो नाउ हतेरा. हतेरा को अगर कोई ट्रांसलेट करेगा, बोलेगा अच्छा ये तो गिफ्ट है. इट्स नॉट अ गिफ्ट, इट्स बियॉन्ड अ गिफ्ट. सो एनीवे, नाउ लिंग्विस्टिक रिलेटिविटी एंड कल्चर, द स्पेसिफिक कॉन्सेप्ट्स, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which I was telling you about, the languages shaping thoughts. Okay, examples of untranslatable words. Okay, this is a case study. I'm not getting into it. Ma'am, did you cover this part by any chance? Okay, case study of social linguistic translation challenges, brand translation failures, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, KFC, the literal versus the cultural translation. Do you people know the KFC story? KFC का tagline क्या है? Finger licking good. Finger looking good तो होता क्या? हिंदी में तो आसान है, अंगुली चाटना वाला टाइप का, वो तो फिर भी आसान है. But when it got translated in China, in Chinese language, it became something like eat your fingers. Okay, something like that. Okay, so the person who did the translation. Now, why I brought this up? Because in the future, you people who are studying Korean, Arabic, French, German, Japanese over here, you might be hired by a multinational company sitting in Gurgaon or in Noida and making you sit in the brainstorming session just like this in a round table and saying that, okay, we're opening up a new store in Singapore and we want to have this as the tagline, our tagline translated. And you people are thinking, acha, theek hai. So, but if you know what to do, then you will realize it can't be translated directly. You have to get something which is meaning something like that, which is culturally acceptable. Okay. Otherwise, the way the people protested in China, you will also have a case in hand. Okay? All right. Now, how much more minutes do I have? Sorry. Okay. Now, translate a proverb from your own language into English and discuss its cultural nuances. Take a proverb. Proverb ले लो, बात ले लो, कुछ भी ले लो. एक whatever. Think about it.
There are two.
There are two.
There is a word and then there is a proverb.
Okay,
so
bol.
there is this word in Haryanvi called hambe.
Hambe.
It can mean yes, it can mean no, it can mean a satirical yes, it can mean a satirical no.
आइए खड़े हो जाइए. आओ इधर आओ इधर. सबको देखने दो हमबे हमबे बोलते हुए. आइए आइए. Come. Seriously, come. We are lucky. We're getting exposed to something new. Everybody say hambe. Hambe. अब बताओ हमबे का.
How it is to.
Yeah, you have to tell us the situation. See, guys, I just now explained to you. जब मैंने receptacle बोला, I didn't go just by the word and its first meaning that came in the mind. In जो dictionary खोला बताया. It's not like that. You open the dictionary, few of the words will give you one word with one meaning and उसके synonyms. You understand synonyms? Synonyms means it's the same meaning but different words. But when you have one dot and then you have two dots, is that a synonym? No, it's not a synonym. It is a complete different meaning. So I told you, right? Receptacle ka first word will be dibba, container. Second one was something else. I forgot the word, but I told you, जो receptacle ऐसा वाला, जो honeybees के पास होता है या flower के पास होता है. Now you tell us, हमबे का.
So let's say somebody is asking you something. Are you fine with this? Let's say you will say hambe. Okay, I'm fine with it. Yes, in the meaning of yes or okay. But if you want to say no, you would say hambe. I'm not fine with it. Also, so it will depend on your gesture and
your tone. Okay.
And also satirically, if you're saying okay, if you're let's say saying that I did this, I did that, and you say hambe, satirical.
Oh.
Jaise ki.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And this can also mean whatever. I mean, if somebody is saying like somebody is feeling irritated and say hambe, whatever.
Okay, all right. Oh, okay, all right. So everybody, how would you do this if you were asked, so by the way, if suppose you are Haryanvi and you are given something to translate in English or in Hindi, how would you translate? Then you would give the complete example or would you put it in the brackets? You put it in the brackets, correct? Yeah. Satire, footnote or something. Yes. Okay. Now, this one. Do you think globalization affects translation? Yes, we just talked about it. We just talked about how it was. There is a language loss. There is linguistic imperialism. All right. Now, can anybody tell me why did I put this picture, this image of the big fish? हाँ, बड़ी मछली छोटी मछली को और छोटी मछली अपने से भी छोटी मछली को खाता है, करेक्ट? हाँ, बताइए सर.
जैसे अंग्रेजी हिंदी को दबा रही है और हिंदी अन्य भाषा में छोटी
और हिंदी किसको दबा रही है वो भी तो बताओ.
जैसे आपकी भाषा है.
हाँ.
आपने कहा 21 वर्ष तक मेरी हिंदी थी.
हाँ.
और उसके बाद में जाने की मेरी भाषा.
जैसे अभी बिहार के लोग बोलते हैं, हमारे यहाँ तो खुद की हमारी बहुत सारी भाषा है. अंगिका है, मैथिली है, मगही है, many are there, right? So it is something, it is part and parcel. Personally, I will not say कि वो खा रहा है, ऐसा मैं नहीं कहूँगी. I would say take it in a very positive manner that we have to kind of open up ourselves to the world. अपनी भाषा को भी नहीं भूलो, अपनी भाषा को हमेशा याद करो, रिस्पेक्ट करो, because that is your identity. उसके साथ साथ और भी चीजों को अपनाओ, because that is what is going to take you also places. जितना भी दूर जाओ, बिहार से लेकर ऑस्ट्रेलिया या बिहार से लेकर कैलिफोर्निया, अपनी भाषा को मत भूलो, right? Okay, so challenges in cultural translation. Common challenges क्या है? You have idiomatic expressions and cultural references. अभी जैसे इन्होंने बताया, this idiomatic expression हमबे, okay? हमबे को अगर कैसे बताना है, कैसे बताओगे? दूसरी बात, contextual meanings that do not have direct equivalents. उसका भी मैंने आपको example दिया था, जो आपने दिया था example. आपका कश्मीरी डोगरी में क्या बोला आपने? पाखा, right? पाखा is not a गाना. पाखा has something beyond a गाना. बट उसको गाना बोल के जिसने भी उसको गाना बोला, उसके बाद म्यूजिक ऐड हो गया, उसके बाद पाखा खत्म हो गया और एक डिफरेंट वर्जन ऑफ पाखा आ गया, करेक्ट? ओके. तीसरा, द रिस्क ऑफ मिसइंटरप्रिटेशन और लॉस ऑफ नुआंस, सिमिलर टू व्हाट शी सेड. ओके. नाउ which challenge do you consider most critical when translating cultural text? What do you think is a challenge? Have any of you ever tried translating? You've tried. How many of you have tried translating? यहाँ तो हिंदी translation के students ही बैठे. Okay, तो पहले इनसे शुरू करते. हाँ, आपने किया तो बताइए.
Yesterday's session, I was saying that onomatopic translation is very difficult.
Excellent.
Because I think yesterday I was taking the example of one poem of Harivansh Rai Bachchan.
बहुत बढ़िया.
And when I had to translate those onomatopic words,
yes,
especially then in French it became a lot of problem.
Okay.
Because
give the example of that particular word.
I will say, for example, how the blood flows in your body. Just for example, sing si dahar kar, ऐसे that was the poem. So and the words which were coming, or the sounds are very cultural.
Yes.
For example, that will be very. For example, let's say when I am speaking, my mother tongue is Bengali. The way I will describe a sound, somebody else who's let us say speaking Hindi will not use the same sound in the same context. Cock-a-doodle-doo you say.
Yeah.
The cock-a-doodle-doo English speakers will say cock is doing cock-a-doodle-doo. Here we will say coo-coo-coo.
Yeah, true.
So that is very difficult to translate.
जैसे मैं एग्जांपल देती हूँ कि अंग्रेजी कुत्ता बोलता है भाव वाव और हमारा इंडियन कुत्ता होता है भाव भाव. Remember that example. That is exactly example that you're giving. It's true. You are translating the text from English to Hindi, तो do justice to Hindi. क्यों लिखोगे कि हाँ ये कुत्ता भाव भाव कर रहा है? लिखो कि कुत्ता भाव भाव कर रहा है. Take pride in the translation. Take pride in the language. Introduce. It is your duty as a translator to introduce the audience. Who is the audience? The reader. To get acquainted to the culture of the people that he is reading about. Don't just make it easy. अच्छा नहीं यार क्यों उसको भाव भाव बोले? उसको भाव भाव आसान है, उसको भाव भाव ही बोले. नहीं, हमारा कुत्ता भाव भाव करता है. ऐसे. Alright, it's a joke, but I'm just telling you. Alright, now guess the meaning of these idioms. We don't have much time. Just quickly, just to give you an example. आपके गुरु लोग आपको करवाते होंगे. For example, English में it's raining cats and dogs. बाप रे आज तो कुत्ते और बिल्ली है रे. अब बेटे कुत्ते और बिल्ली no. So what are you going to do? Yes, मूसलाधार बारिश. ठीक है. To have a monkey on one's back. मेरे पीठ में एक बंदर है. No. What would you say? To have basically something difficult, something that's irritating you, something like that. तो आपको वैसी टाइप का कुछ सोचना पड़ेगा जो हिंदी में है. नाक में नकेल. Is that how it will be? Okay, all right. So you have a look at it. Okay, something annoying. Next one, like a cat on hot bricks. Like a cat on hot bricks. And by the way, it's not even just what you're saying; it's how you're saying it. Okay, hot bricks. Okay, literally, expression goes like that. All right. So you can discuss about it because our next one. Translation as a cultural bridge. I already told you about it, okay? Translation is not word for word. It is about conveying meaning. Examples of mistranslations. Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the dead. मैंने आपको KFC का ऐड तो बता दिया. Finger licking good. हाथ उंगलियां खा जाना वाला टाइप का वही वाला. The other one, got milk, translated as are you lactating in Mexico, okay? Lactating is when mothers are feeding the babies, yes. तो उन्होंने उसको गॉट मिल्क को वैसे ही ट्रांसलेट कर दिया और जिसको पता नहीं था उसने उसको छपा भी दिया और बाद में उनके केस भी हो गया. ओके, सो दिस इज रियली व्हाट्स हैपनिंग अराउंड द वर्ल्ड. इट्स नॉट अबाउट इंग्लिश एंड हिंदी, इट्स ऑल अराउंड द वर्ल्ड. मैं आपको दुनिया का मैप दिखाया और मैंने आपको भारत का मैप दिखाया. क्यों दिखाया? बिकॉज इन बोथ द सिचुएशंस यू अंडरस्टैंड इवन इन आवर कंट्री ट्रांसलेटिंग फ्रॉम हिंदी टू एनी ऑफ द अदर लैंग्वेजेस आल्सो वी कैन हैव अ मेजर इशू. Unless the people don't realize.
There is also this peculiarity of script. So there is this Lundy or Mundi script used in northwest parts where they don't use matras, and there is a very popular anecdote where they say Lala ji aaj Ajmer gaye hain, and without matra you can read Lala ji aaj mar gaye.
Ah yes, true. One thing which I forgot, the political science person, this is for her, you. आपको पता है हमारे देश जो बना है, the states themselves have been formed on the basis of language. Yes, 3 new states. My state, Uttarakhand, along with Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, it was formed on that. Telangana and Andhra, you know the story, right? So there is a particular. It's very good that you took up this. You should thank him and the organizers, sir, and all, because politics of language is actually a particular, PhD topic. Now, Language influences thought and perception. हमने इसको पहले भी बता दिया था. Example, some cultures do not have a word for left and right. They have only cardinal directions. जैसे I forgot the name of the community. Australia में भी ऐसी बात है. They will not say go to the left, go to the right. They go actually by the directions like north, west, south, east. Don't you think that is better? That's actually better. India में तो ऐसा है. लोग right का हाथ दिखा के बोलते हैं बाएं जाएं, left जाओ. Because when I first came and I was, मेरी मम्मी ने मुझे सिखाया क्योंकि she knew कि दाएं और बाएं में मुझे प्रॉब्लम है. किसको प्रॉब्लम है दाएं और बाएं में? Confusion? Okay, आज के बाद नहीं होगा, याद रखना. जिस हाथ से
ऐसा अपने स्टूडेंट को मैं बताती हूँ.
हाँ बताइए.
ऐसा करो और ये आप बताइए.
नहीं गुड आप भी बताओ मैम. मैं कुछ और आप बताओ.
ये है डी और ये है डी. हाँ तो
दाएं बाएं. Okay. Yeah. So like this. Yeah. Okay. That's good. वो सही है. आपको वो अच्छा लगता है वो कर दो. D और B. That's very good. ठीक है. हर किसी का अपना होता है. मेरी माँ ने मुझे बोला बेटा तुझे दही खाना पसंद है और तू दही दाएं हाथ से लेती है. तो मैंने कहा हाँ. बट प्रॉब्लम है अगर आप दही बाएं हाथ से लेते हो तो आपके लिए गड़बड़ हो जाएगा. So better to remember hers. Okay. दाएं. Okay. Good. So. या लेटर डी. आप अपना उंगली देखो. हाँ डी. सर ये डी हुआ ना. ये ऐसे करके डी हुआ.
ये आप अपना नहीं देखते.
ओके एवरीवन. हाँ ओके. आई हैव बीन गिवन द सिग्नल. जल्दी. ओके. स्ट्रैटेजीज फॉर इफेक्टिव कल्चरल ट्रांसलेशन. अगर आपको एक इफेक्टिव ट्रांसलेशन करना है व्हाट आर द बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस? इन डेप्थ कल्चरल रिसर्च कीजिए. ठीक है. सबसे पहले शी सेड शी इज अ बंगालन. Yes, she's a Bengali. Okay, Bengali बोला प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं.
नहीं वो तो हिंदी में तो बंगाली बोलते हैं.
बहुत बढ़िया.
French में somebody would have said to a Bengali.
Very good. Okay, so ma'am is a Bengali who knows French, English and Hindi. Okay, so imagine she is actually translating. So she needs to know the culture of each and every language that she will be translating in. Okay. All right. Collaboration with the native speakers and the cultural experts. Agar let us say that she is a Bengali who is fluent in English and Hindi. French mein she's pretty good, but maybe in the next 10 years she'll get better. But right now she still needs to confirm and check with somebody who is a French native speaker. Okay. जब तक आप बिल्कुल वो नहीं हो जाते हो, पक्के नहीं हो जाते हो, you need time. Then using both domestication and foreignization judiciously. Importance of cultural competence. Now technology last में ये cover करूँगी. Machine versus human translation, Google Translate versus professional translators. मैंने आपको example दे दिया है. आप जाकर crowd sourcing करके दिखाओ. Crowd sourcing वो दिखाएगा आपको भीड़. Okay? जबकि वो भीड़ वाली बात नहीं है. It is जनसूत्र. It is basically public say and we already talked about it. Interactive activity, AI versus human translation. Try translating an idiom from your language using Google Translate and discuss the accuracy. Now this is another important thing. There is an ethical considerations. मैंने आपको starting में भी ये बात बताया था. In translation, not only should you be politically correct, there is censorship and biasness which a person can sometimes bring of their own. You have to take care of that. There is an importance of cultural sensitivity. जैसे कि I heard during her talk, you asked this question कि ma'am religious के something you had asked. Can you change the thing that some certain texts are changed, right? उसका meaning कुछ और होता है. I'm just coming to that part. So, yeah, I'll just come to that. Should translation always be literal? How do we ensure cultural sensitivity? Is it okay to modify religious or political texts in translation? The answer is obviously no. Everybody say no. It is not okay to do that. You have to consider, you have to say it as it is. You cannot do injustice. There is an ethical thing that is okay. During yes, ma'am.
लेकिन कभी-कभी
yes.
ये नो नहीं चलेगा.
हाँ.
तो मैं उस पर
okay, you can talk about it.
कभी-कभी यानी कोई जैसे कि कल्चरल की
yes.
कारण
yes, ma'am.
के लिए थोड़ा सा मॉडिफिकेशन हो सकता है. जैसे कि मैं एक एग्जांपल दे दूंगी. जैसे कि जब आप चाइनीज में ट्रांसलेशन करते हैं, चाइनीज कल्चर में कुछ चीजें नहीं
हाँ वही ओके या दैट वे यू मेंट ओके और हाँ
ये नहीं
Yeah, actually see, मैंने एक चीज बोला था that ethical considerations have to be done and technically you should be saying it as it is, right? But what she's trying to tell you, जहाँ पे आपको दबाव पड़ता है because of certain reasons, okay? It could be political, it could be ideological, it could be certain reasons. You have to save the community, save the people, and accordingly you have to take care, okay? So I agree with that part, yes. But I was hoping that they'll be stronger. But I agree. कभी-कभी जान भी.
There are rules.
Yes, yes.
But then
Yes.
rules have to be applied.
You have to save yourself. Yes.
Also has to do with the discursiveness of translation.
Yes.
How
Okay.
Foucault talks about
The translator is a cultural mediator, adapting the tone, the intent and context, ethics in diplomatic and literary translation. ये जो मैडम कह रही है diplomacy वाली, वो ये वाला लाइन पे आ गया है, ठीक है? All right. Now, that's it. This I saw ma'am had done something similar, so I just removed it from the main thing. So this is a scenario, I just wanted you to think about this. Should a translator alter the content that might be offensive in another culture? That what ma'am is saying, but yes, it depends on the situation. Okay. Generally, no, but as ma'am said, certain rules have to be mended or bent a little bit depending on the situation. Okay. So the key takeaways, ladies and gentlemen, is that language is deeply tied to culture. Do you agree? Yes or no? Yes? Okay. Translation is more than words. It conveys meaning, rest, and context. Social linguistic enhances cross-cultural understanding. And the final reflection is for all of you, what did you learn? You spent 1.5 or 2 hours of your life right now, and what did you learn? How does this apply to your experience? So thank you to each and every one of you who have come from outside JNU. Okay. All right. Any questions? Any questions? The floor is open because I've already crossed the time limit. हाँ जी, किसी को कुछ कहना? हाँ, सभी लैंग्वेजेस जितना मैं कर सकती थी वो छोटे से डब्बे में मैंने किया है. हाँ जी, किसी को कुछ कहना है, पूछना है? Any experience to share anything? वैसे तो मैंने बहुत कोशिश किया कि आपके सोचने से पहले ही बता दूं टाइम बचाने के लिए. So इसलिए it's become a little bit longer so that initially sir I was like इतना कैसे बात करूंगी? He said don't worry, I know you will speak. All right. So everyone, I'm sorry if you were expecting a technical one with the definitions and everything. I tried to balance with the actual interactiveness and to, try to get you people to think. Because ma'am already did a very good job of making you people understand the different concepts. And aapke guru log to aapko bata hi rahe hain. But I wanted you people to think for yourself in political science, in French, in Arabic, in Korean. Your Korean faculties are here. Your Persian faculties are here. What exactly is going in the process? It's not as simple as you think, okay? I have spent the last 2 weeks at CDAC Noida trying to be part of the committee that is translating around, for artificial intelligence, we translated 3,000 words. Last में हमको 500 words psycholinguistics का भी दे दिया. Why? Because psycholinguistics is a part of artificial intelligence. और जो मैंने आपको crowdsourcing का example दिया है, because of certain reasons, because it's confidential, I can't share the entire word list, I'm sorry. And sir recording कर रहे हैं तो वैसे भी नहीं कर सकते, इसलिए मैंने खाली एक word का ही लिया है, because this is a common word. ठीक है? हाँ जी.
So as a student of literature, there is a thing we read about contrapuntal reading against the grain, and there is also
यहाँ पे हाँ.
This thing called writing against the grain, where you have certain connotations hidden within the text.
Yes.
So do we also have something called translation against the grain, where you try to privilege a certain connotation within the text in your translation, but it's not the dominant or privileged connotation in, let's say, other translations?
Okay, and so just correct me if I'm wrong, okay? What you're saying is certain words, when they are written down in a sentence, they can have a double meaning. That we agree? Yes? So now when you as a translator are translating, what will you be translating? Will you be translating the upper layer one translation, or will you be getting the double?
Not just that, I'm speaking of it in discursive and political terms as well. I'll just take an example. So there is this novel that I read as a part of my undergraduate studies, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad.
Okay.
Now that novel you read contrapuntally, not just what is being said, but what is missing and what is the connotation behind what is being said.
Okay.
So when you translate a text such as that, what connotation do you privilege?
Okay, so whatever message was given out to you, what you picked up, that is obviously what the writer wanted. Okay, so there is one thing. when a country is going through certain political changes, okay, let's say when the Nazis were there, okay, and the Jews were writing initially before they were taken to the concentration camps, the Jews were voicing out. They couldn't directly voice out. They were voicing out in different ways. Like ma'am said, direct translation nahi, thoda, you have to be very careful. Now, if she was given a text written by a Jewish person and she knew the language, she knew Hebrew, and she is translating it, she is trying to protect the person. Do you think she is going to tell the Nazi that what it actually meant? No. Depends. If she is wanting, yeah. Yes. If she, depending on her ethics. So what is her understanding? It's not as if she doesn't know both the meanings. It is what she wants to give out to the world. I told you people, who are you people translating for? For yourself? No, you are translating for the audience. Mahatma Gandhi said, customer is God. You people say, audience is God. Say it. Audience is God. You are doing it for the translator, for the person who's reading. You are the translator. So you will always try to think that for him or her to do justice, try to as much as possible do the best. What you interpreted, give it to them. Under the circumstances, what she has already mentioned, be careful also. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Actually, yesterday, while we were doing translation of poetry, one thing, it skipped my mind at that point of time. Because later when I went back, I recollected. When I was a student in class 7, I had read the English version of a poetry of Rabindranath Tagore. Everybody knows. He translated his own work himself. Yes. Okay. But the form of the poetry had completely changed in the English translation, and I had read the English translation first, and the Bengali I heard much later, although Bengali is my mother tongue. So I will just share a few verses so that I will tell you how it changes in translation, but the poet himself did it. Okay. So it is on Upagupta. He is a sannyasi who follows Buddhism. So the English translation goes, Upagupta, the disciple of Buddha, lay asleep in the dust by the city wall of Mathura. Lamps were all out, doors were all shut, and stars were all hidden by the murky sky of August. This is the English version. Now I'll read you the Bengali one, although many people will not be able to understand the Bengali. Shannashi Upagupta, Mathurapuri প্রাচীরের তলে একদা ছিলেন সুপ্ত নগরীর দ্বীপ নিবেছে পবনে দুয়ারে রুদ্ধ পৌর ভবনে নিশীথে তারা শ্রাবণ গগনে ঘন মেঘে অবলুপ্ত. You can understand the rhyme schema. I'm not asking to do the rhyme schema, which is actually gupto, shupto, lupto. That is exactly what he's doing. We call it the rim plate, A B A B. But when he's doing it in English, he's just doing it in 3+. But he himself does.
There is also this case of Premchand's novel Husn-e Bazaar and Seva Sadan.
प्रेमचंद ऐसा सबके साथ होता है. हरिमोहन झा ने खट्टर प्रकाश कलम शीर्षक से अपनी किताब में राजकीय प्रकाशन से खट्टर काकर छपी हुई. देश की तमाम भाषाओं में उसका तमिल, तेलुगु, कन्नड़, मलयालम में, बंगला में सब में अनुवाद हो चुका है. लेकिन सारे लोगों ने अनुवाद किया है, बंगाली छोड़कर बाकी सब ने अनुवाद किया है हिंदी से. और वह हिंदी खुद ही खराब ट्रांसलेशन जो हरिमोहन झा ने खुद किया. जो अंग्रेजी के, संस्कृत के, मैथिली के प्रकार के अनुवाद जब कभी होगा, सही सोच रही थी कि अनुवाद में ध्वनियों का भी अनुवाद अल्प प्राण महाप्राण सारी ही चीजें उसमें लगी रहे, तो वो इस तरह से तो ऐसे ही होगा. ये सब समस्या है.
बहुत धन्यवाद मैम. बाहर चाय आप सबका इंतजार कर रही है. उससे पहले औपचारिक धन्यवाद के लिए मैं हमारे सेंटर के साथी डॉक्टर नसीब अली जी को आमंत्रित करता हूं कि डॉक्टर संदेशा रायपाल जी के इतने विचारोत्तेजक और दिलचस्प व्याख्यान के लिए उनको धन्यवाद अदा करें.
आपको मुझे अपना
सलाम आदाब। मैं चूँकि अभी हम लोग फैकल्टी मीटिंग में थे और क्योंकि 2 दिन से हम लोग ज्ञान का प्रोग्राम जो चल रहा है पूरे कैंपस में चर्चा है, इसके लिए सबसे पहले मैं गंगा जी को और ख़ासकर नवीन सर को जो हमारे सेंटर के हम सब के बड़े हैं, मैं इनका शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहता हूँ। और ख़ासकर मैम से जो अभी मैम कल्चर की बात कर रही थी, चूँकि पूरे सेंटर्स में पूरे जेएनयू में मेरी अपनी भी ज़ुबान है, हम सबकी अलग अलग कल्चर से, जैसे एक बच्ची ने यहाँ बोला कि पाखा डोगरी में, तो मेरी ज़ुबान गोजरी और डोगरी है। जानकारी के लिए कि अलग अलग कल्चर को हम लोग जानते हैं और मैम ने बहुत अच्छे खूबसूरत तरीके से बताया। लेकिन मैं सर से हंस रहा था कि जैसे मैम ने कहा कि जो अंग्रेज डॉग है वो जिस तरह से बॉव करते हैं, मतलब जैसे बता रहे थे मैम, और हिंदुस्तानी मतलब उनका अलग है। तो मैं मैम को ये बोल रहा था, इनको बोल रहा था कि यदि हिंदुस्तान के कुत्ते जो है एक ही जुबान से उनकी जुबान जाती है, लेकिन हमारी लगभग बोली है, हम सबकी क्यों नहीं है। इसके लिए मतलब मज़ेदार बात थी, बहुत अच्छे। मैम आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, आपका धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूँ और अच्छा लगा मुझे, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, थैंक यू।
Can we take a quick group photograph? आइए and I'll give you my number, जिसको भी कभी कुछ हो और डोगरी वाली स्पीकर है। ओके,
आइए मैम के साथ फोटो लीजिए और फिर चाय पीजिए।
नंबर है 9811, चलो भी और आओ भी जल्दी, डोंट वेस्ट योर टाइम। I would never share my number.
मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि आज ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं। हाँ, एक बात I can change it.
अंतर सांस्कृतिक संप्रेषण विषय पर ज्ञान और भारतीय भाषा केंद्र के द्वारा आयोजित इस 10 दिवसीय कार्यशाला के तीसरे दिन के दूसरे सत्र में इस सभागार में एक बार फिर से चाय के बाद आप सबका हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूं। और अभी हम सब मैडम प्रोफेसर अलेसांद्रा जी से सुनेंगे ट्रांसलेशन एंड इंडियन कल्चर एंड ट्रांसलेशन। आप ध्यान दें कि नुक्ता के हेर फेर से खुदा जुदा भी हो जाते हैं, तो ये एंड की जगह इन रहा होता। अनुवाद में भारतीय संस्कृति और अनुवाद, भारतीय संस्कृति में अनुवाद, तो ये जो जिसको प्रीपोजिशन कहते हैं अंग्रेजी में, हिंदी में वो कारक की कई विभक्तियां हैं। तो ये कारक विभक्तियों के भेद से अर्थ किस तरह भेद उत्पन्न करते हैं, और लगातार आप लोग 3 दिनों से प्रोफेसर अलेसांद्रा जी को सुन रहे हैं। और जैसा कि हम सब इस बात से मुतमईन हैं कि इन 3 दिनों के आयोजनों में प्रोफेसर अलेसांद्रा जी ने हम सबको और भारत में अनुवाद की परंपरा को और भारतीय भाषा केंद्र जेएनयू में संचालित अनुवाद अध्ययन ज्ञान शाखा को बहुत समृद्ध किया है। हम आप सब की तरफ से, भारतीय भाषा केंद्र परिवार की तरफ से, जेएनयू परिवार की तरफ से प्रोफेसर अलेसांद्रा जी का हार्दिक अभिनंदन करते हैं और हमें इस तरह समृद्ध करने के लिए इनके प्रति आभार व्यक्त करते हैं। अभी हम सुने भारतीय संस्कृति और अनुवाद, प्रोफेसर अलेसांद्रा जी।
ओह सॉरी,
मुंह के बल गिरा।
ठीक है। तो अच्छा, फिर से नमस्ते, जोहार, सलाम अलैकुम, सत श्री अकाल, or thank you for being here for the third day. I don't know if you will survive, but I hope so. Actually, Naveen ji pointed out something very interesting, that the title of this talk can be modified in different ways, but in any case, it is regarding India, Bharat, or Anuvad. या अनुवाद इंडिया, मतलब
मैंने ये कहा कि ये एक जो बीच में,
हाँ बीच में, हाँ
इसको यदि बदल देंगे,
हाँ
अर्थ कितना बदलेगा।
लेकिन मतलब हम इसको रखेंगे, लेकिन जो अर्थ है हम मॉडिफाई कर सकेंगे। तो क्योंकि मैंने सोचा था कि इस क्लास के लिए थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा समय हो, क्योंकि सिलेबस में ये लिखा हुआ था कि समय अलग हो, लेकिन तो मैंने सोचा कि okay, we will try to define translation again. We did it in the first time, and then I wanted to talk about intra-Indian translations and multilingualism. So in this case, we are talking about the culture of translation within India and among Indian languages. And then, you know, the relation between English and local languages, so Orientalism and after, and I would like to, you know, see what's happening also today. I would like to bring a case. So why is the Padmavat so problematic? And I don't know, you probably, I hope everybody knows what Padmavat is. If you have never heard about it, which is very strange, but anyway, I will just try to talk about that. And then I wanted also to talk about the institutionalization of translation in India and the problem of translation and translation regarding Indian translations of Indian works, of Indian novels, for example, into English nowadays, you know, and what it means to be recognized at an international level. And this I can do because, you know, I have translated it to Italian, a very famous novel, so everybody is like saying, oh my God, you translated it. Yes, I did. So, I mean, and it's really like, I could perceive what this means. You know, you have an English translation and you are seen. So these are the points that I wanted to talk about. I don't know if we will have time to do all of that, but okay, I will just try to start with the first one. We go back to the definition of translation, and okay, the first day also we had a definition, you know, in the previous session, so we are not spending too much time of that. Okay, in Hindi, and I'm using Hindi because this is the only Indian language that I know, but I mean, that I studied. So it's Anuvad. And Anuvad is, okay, if you look at the dictionary, it is translated as translation. But at synonymous, you have Bhashantar, you have Tarjuma, and Anuvad is a Sanskrit word that comes from Anu, that is like, you know, this prefix that means trans, going after also with along across, and vad, which is like, you know, speaking the word and so on. And I found out that there are many other Indian languages that use some words that are very similar. I don't know any of them, so I took, you know, what was written on the dictionary as something that is true. If you have, you know, any problem, just point it out to me. What is important is that if we go back to the meaning that we find in the Sanskrit dictionary, it's saying after, saying again, it's repeating. So we had spoken about, you know, the translation as something that transfers, that brings something across. So, and here we have a sort of different meaning. So there is this idea of commenting on, repeating, saying after somebody has said. It's interesting that in some of the let's say distant meanings are also abuse and tautology, which is like repetition, which is okay, but tautology has a negative meaning because it means repeating something that is not needed, you know. So just, and conformity. So translation has all these different meanings. Avadeshwar Kumar Singh, in one of his papers, in one of his essays, writes that Anuvad was a knowledge transmission and a pedagogical strategy of Indian tradition. And he refers to the Guru Shishya tradition, saying that what comes after, so the disciple repeating what the Guru said, this is, you know, the real meaning of translation. That's why it is like, you know, a pedagogical strategy. And he defines it as an inclusive, comprehensive, and non-hierarchical, unfettered by linguistic transference, and it includes recitation, restatement, commentaries, and interpretation. If you remember what I said in my first class, I was asking, can we consider this translation? Well, according to Avadeshwar Kumar Singh, if we think of Anuvad, we should say yes, all this is translation, okay, in the Indian context, of course. So we also have Tarjuma, and Tarjuma is like borrowed from Persian, Again, here we have a name that apparently I found has entered many Indian languages. So I assume that it's, you know, another important word for translation. And it's interesting because, you know, the first one comes from Sanskrit and this one comes from Persian. So here again, we can see that we have this like double heritage, you know, to describe a phenomenon. Then, of course, we also have Bashantar, and this is really like changing the language, and we can use it as linguistic transference, which is transfer from one language to the other. And here we go back to the first meaning of, you know, translatio, you know, you bring one meaning to the other. But Avdesh Kumar Singh proposes also other names. I don't want to spend too much time with that. I just want to point out that, of course, if we want to claim that the Indian tradition is different, then we have some reasons to do it. If we want to claim that, okay, we are talking about the same thing, we have some reasons to do it. It depends on, you know, our aim. So I went to the notion of rupantar, which is like, you know, changing the form. And it's like metamorphosis. And if you remember, metamorphosis is something that I mentioned also when we went back to the Greek meaning, which is related, you know, to say after, to change the form. And this is interesting because in the idea of rupantar, we really have the changing of the form, but it's also the notion of semiotic transference, semiotic appropriation. And so it's really like, you know, you can consider as translation also, for example, Harry Potter in Hindi subtitles or something like that, you know, or, you know, when you make a film out of a novel. So this is rupantar. So, and if they are synonymous, and we know that synonymous are not exactly the same thing, but, you know. After this definition, I would like to just go into the idea of what happened in India about translation, because for a long time it was told that because Anuvad is something different from translation, so there is nothing like translation in India in the old times. And so, actually, we can think of the multilingual situation in India, where you have like languages of prestige, languages of classical languages, let's call like them, you know, languages of power. And of course, if we think of the old times, we can think of Sanskrit and Tamil, for example. We can think of Persian and Arabic for some time. We can think also of English, but also within Indian languages, as you know, we just heard in the previous session, you know, there are different levels, you know, so some languages are a bigger fish than other languages. And so, I mean, this has always been there. Of course, we have different degrees to access to different languages, and we have the notion of bhasha at a certain point, which is generally translated as vernacular languages. That was how the English, you know, during the British time, it was translated. And even nowadays, you know, it's like, oh, this was written in vernacular. So, but under, you know, the label bhasha, what do we have? It's not one language. Bhasha can mean, okay, it's language. But what we mean, you know, it's different kind of vernaculars that are tailored to different workplaces, to different arenas, to different audiences. And of course, even the elite languages, you know, like Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic, they had different levels according to, okay, they were language of an elite, but not all the elites were the same. So even when we think of all this I mean, complexity, we should keep in mind that a text, can pass through languages, but can also be translated in multiple styles and multiple forms, rupantar, even if it's within one language. So this is something that, is always been present, because if you think of, literary texts passing from one language to the other, maybe we don't find an evidence of translation, like somebody was very keen on the notion of equivalence, the same word to word, the same, even the dynamic equivalence, of a text. But if we think of this wider idea of, Anuvad and Rupantar, then the Jataka, they have many different manifestations, and even in between Sanskrit and Tamil, we have some texts. I'm not an expert neither in Sanskrit nor in Tamil, but I found, this, and I spoke to some colleagues of mine, that, for example, when you have like texts that talk about drama, and there are really, some contiguities that it's not a translation, but it's like, the same idea or in a different way. And also, for example, if we think of the dissemination of bhakti, I think Navinji is going to talk about that, so I'm not delving on this topic, but what do we do with the similarities that we find between texts that are from the south in Tamil and from the north in Bengal, and of course it's not a translation, but somehow these wandering mistresses that traveled in India, they were probably not translating in the text that in the sense that they had a written text, when translating it, but they were translating, And, this is another very important thing that has always been there. So very often I think when I read about, translation in India, that this is stressed as, a peculiarity of, the Indian culture. So you have a question?
I just had a point that wouldn't it be appropriation then? The dissemination of idea itself as an appropriation. They are appropriating each other's idea.
Okay, but if we accept the notion of Rupantar, that's the point, yeah.
रूपांतर के लिए हिंदी में शब्द है एडाप्टेशन के लिए रूपांतर,
हाँ वो भी है,
और एप्रोप्रिएशन के लिए आत्मसातीकरण। जैसे रामचरितमानस तो रामायण का वह आत्मसातीकरण, एप्रोप्रिएशन और डोमेस्टिकेशन, जिसको वहाँ तो पलटूकरण कहा गया, पर वो घरेलूकरण। ये लेकिन ये घरेलूकरण भी थोड़ा ठीक ठाक नहीं लगता है शब्द हिंदी में। इसका आत्मसातीकरण, वो उस समय में 16वीं शताब्दी का जो भारत था, उस संस्कृति में 7वीं शताब्दी में वाल्मीकि द्वारा लिखी गई चीज को आत्मसातीकरण, एप्रोप्रिएट करके उस समय के समाज को देखते हुए जैसे राम जैसी सीता की जरूरत थी वैसा उन्होंने रखा। यहीं पर संतुलिता सिद्धांत भी थोड़ा फेल होता है कि 16वीं शताब्दी के भारत को 7वीं शताब्दी के राम की जरूरत नहीं।
जी जी
वहाँ 16वीं शताब्दी का राम चाहिए जो मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम भी हो सकते।
And this is interesting because if we think of translation as this like also as performance, I'm coming to this, for example. Of course, I was going to mention the different adaptation or appropriation or translation or call them.
Even in Sanskrit, source or extant text is in Paishachi.
जी.
So far we have not found a Sanskrit text.
Source is Paishachi, not Paishachi. You are talking about Brihat Katha.
Brihat Katha is in Paishachi. So yes.
It was earlier in Paishachi and it was appropriated. Paishachi, not Paishachi, Pingal. वो मुनि को असल में कहा गया कि इस कौन सिखा देगा संस्कृत इसको? तो जो वहां के राज पंडित थे उनको जब बुलाया गया, उन्होंने कहा, गुनाजी ने कहा कि संस्कृत ऐसी भाषा नहीं है कि ये सप्ताह भर में या 6 महीना में सीख जाए, तो उनको निकाल दिया। अपमान बोध से वे जब जंगल गए तो वहां खून से उन्होंने जानवरों के चमड़े पर लिखना शुरू किया, और फिर ये सब कथा है। और जब ये हुआ कि अब क्या करें, तो उसको गुनाजी ने सुनाना शुरू किया, और जब सुनाया गया तो सुना के एक एक पाठ सुनाते थे और उसको आग में डालते जाते थे, वो जलता चला जाता, और सुनने वाले सारे पशु पक्षी थे। वे कथा जब वो सुना रहे थे तो जो पशु पक्षी वहां आते थे वो भूख से वहां से निकलते नहीं थे, तो वो मरने लगे धीरे धीरे। तो इधर राजा के यहाँ मांसाहार के लिए पशुओं की कमी होने लगी। तब राजा ने जब खोज की तो फिर उस पंडित को पकड़ के लाया गया, और तब वो डिंगल से फिर वापस संस्कृत में किया गया। ये है, तो वो ये पंचतंत्र तो विष्णु शर्मा द्वारा लिखा हुआ, अमर सिंह के राज में हो रहा है, हुआ।
I'm very grateful for your contribution, but I don't want to delve into these kind of problems. My point is different. You know, my point is not to show who was the first one and where it comes from. What is... नहीं, ये ठीक है. This is a very important issue, but today my point is to try to see this, let's say, translational culture that, you know, has been described somehow in different ages, and regarding, we can see that there was something that we can define as translation, maybe not in the idea that Jacobson gave to us, you know, it's more in the line of Anuvad Rupantar, so and okay, but it was there. And what is important, I mean, my point is that this sort of process, you know, what we can call translation in a wide sense, you know, transferring this katha, these stories from, you know, one language to the other, at a certain point became very important because they promoted the standardization of what we can call Indo-Aryan languages, or, you know, modern languages. And so we can see that this idea of translating texts, because yes, I spoke about, for example, these wandering people, you know, going around and singing, but there was also a written tradition. And so this written tradition linked to the transmission of, for example, Katha or Ram Katha or whatever, it was there. And so, of course, there are modifications, we can call them adaptation, we can do this. But if the notion of translation is the one that we have defined at the beginning of our talk, then we can see that it was there. And what is relevant is that, you know, it influenced also the standardization of the so-called vernaculars. I don't know if we agree on that, but I think this is a very relevant point. And so translation is, yes, rewording, so saying it after, you know, saying it in a different way, maybe giving also a commentary, or, you know, just explaining, because this is what we said, this is what Anuvad is. It's also changing the script. And we can see this in the different manuscripts, you know, because this was the standard procedure for, you know, communicating text to different audiences. You know, you could change the wording or the script. And for example, sometimes we have two manuscripts that they seem to be the same text in the same script, but they are meant to be read by different people in different instances, and they will have a different reception. I'll give you an example that if we see the same text, I mean, this is not the same text, but I mean, I just, you know, put some images. The same text in an inscription over a miniature painting, or the same words in a singer's handbook with some kind of marks that are meant for this oral mediation by the performer. And, the performers, of course, they could modify the inflection, the words, according to the audience they were talking to. So it is the same text. But what we have in the reception, it's different. So, and this is also, we can call it maybe I don't know, a kind of translation. And if you think of, for example, performers that are actors or, singers, maybe they can also stop. They have the text and they are telling the text, but they can stop, insert some improvisation and elaboration, explanations for the audience in the passages that they think, they are not very clear, or, maybe they think that it's good to give an explanation. Yesterday, we got, a speaker who was really in favor of explanation into the translation. So it's more or less the same. It's like you don't put a footnote, you're talking and you explain the text. So this is the kind of translation that we find if, my colleagues who are really studying scripts, they are really, bringing out this idea of, translation as something different from, the notion that maybe we can have if we stick to the definition by Gibson. And at that time, so the concept of an original text that has a high status, which is the reason why some important. So in this context, this is not important at all. It was not so relevant. It's something that came much later, and in the so-called medieval age, what Bastian defined as the phantasm of equivalence was not there. So that's why, if we don't have the problem of equivalence, then we can accept a notion, a much wider notion of translation. And this is what historically seems to be there, So and of course, in this context, the notion of the author becomes debatable, because the notion of you have to get Shakespeare and the author with capital A was something that comes much later. But so in this field of translation, of course, I mentioned this intra-lingual translation, between intra-Indian translation among the so-called vernaculars. We also have translation from Sanskrit into other, let's say, prestige languages like Arabic and Persian. And of course, this was a sort of specialized kind of translation that went on for many years. It was also present in you probably know better than I do, during the colonial time. And of course, it was special kind of text, because it was like practical arts, science, political works, metaphysical and mystical treatises. And when the Britishers came, they commissioned also, some translations of works on Hindu religion and law. And this is very crucial, because, the idea that the Britishers had created about, the Indian context, and we just spoke about, you're talking about India, and so everybody in India is if you are a Hindu, you are like this, if you are like, I don't know, we just learned about other languages, even in small languages, maybe from one village to the other, you have differences and maybe also local variations, like crystallized. So I would like to move to the relationship between English and the local languages. I will be very brief, because, of course, here you have a huge literature about that. And it's interesting that there is a difference between what happened during the so-called British Orientalism phase, that is from the end of the 18th century to mid-19th century. And in this time, of course, we have, okay, I think everybody is acquainted to the notion of Orientalism that was proposed by Said. But when we say Orientalism in this sense, it's a different kind of Orientalism. It's really like, you know, people who wanted to learn about what they defined as the Orient. And of course, in this process, there is also the process of self-definition, you know, both for the English and also for the Indian people, because we know that out of this process of Orientalism, then, you know, we have some notions like nationalism that are produced later. But it's interesting because in the first phase, what they wanted to see was like finding an account or an authentic account of what India is. And I think the first Orientalists were really sincerely interested in, you know, knowing this culture. And they, of course, their mistake was that they imagined that as a monolithic culture. But anyway, it was like, but then after I would say that a more political comes into and because when English became the language of administration, and I don't have to quote Macaulay to you because I think everybody has heard, you know, about brown people, you know, but that are really English inside. And so this, of course, changed things, you know. After this process, what happens is that, you know, more Indian people, educated Indian people, acquire English proficiency, and of course, there is an effort to translate English books into local languages, which was promoted by the Britishers themselves, because they thought that, you know, it was a way to promote English literature. But after some time, this has a side effect. And because, you know, we have the notion that, you know, for example, the Bengali Babu at that time would be somebody, you know, just sitting there and, you know, collaborating with the Britishers. But the more educated people were there, the more this knowledge of English and translating into English and from English became like a strategy to elaborate different kinds of ideas and of explaining what we are, you know, like finding a way to define also their own identity. For the Britishers, though, these kind of translations were a means to study what they called the Hindu psyche. I mean, their idea was like that. And the idea is that, of course, I mean, they had to translate because they had to, it's like, you know, this is why, for example, Sanskrit was discovered, you know. Sanskrit is the key to understand the Hindu psyche. And of course, it's a discovery that the Britishers claim to have done. I mean, of course, we are in this Orientalistic attitude. What is interesting is that when the first translations into English of the Sanskrit books, of the Sanskrit, let's say, classic books that were identified as the authentic texts in order to understand the Hindu psyche, when this happened, this had an effect also on the text itself, because the first translation that is really interested is a book of law, that is a code of gentoo laws of ordination of the Pandits. And it's interesting that they pick up an old text regarding laws, and they describe it as the textbook of laws for the people in India. But what is even more interesting is that the translation of a Bhagavad Gita that was done in 1784 into English, of course, it brought Bhagavad Gita into the international stage, but it had a side effect also in India, because starting from that very translation, in India, people started to see that, oh, come on, if they are translating this text, it must be a very important text. And this is a text that contains the very value and culture of that we are. And so even the Indian audiences, let's say, that accepted this text in the canon of their own texts. And we can see that it came to be used as a text that was very useful for self-definition. And we can see how Tilak and Gandhi himself, they used the Gita. I mean, maybe it's because, of course, religious motivations, but also because it was a special text. And this happened because it had this double turn. First, it's translated into English. Then, oh my God, this is so important, and then we can use it, and so this goes on. So you see, translation here is a very important process, as I said, in order to develop self-identification. And of course, this was also the way for the Britishers in Europe to create the wonder that was India. Because what happens at this stage is that it's interesting, because, we are using something that is only related to the past. India's present is totally erased. And, for example, think of the judicial matters. You take something very ancient, you don't know what people do really in the villages. You don't ask people. I mean, when you have debates or something, who is deciding what kind of, I don't know, laws do you have? No. You identify something that was there in the past. And so this kind of translation, if we think of what I was talking about in the first day, it's like, a way of promoting the notion that the translation is nowhere to be seen. Because we know that without the local pundits, the Britishers would have never translated one word. But do you know the names of these people? Very often it's translated by a native. A native. So it's like,
Example of someone who is working in this very university, Sadhana Nathani. She worked on a project of post-colonial folkloristics, where this colonial administrator named William Crook compiled folk tales from around North India through an interloper named Pandit Ram Garib Chaube. But it is very recently that people came to know about Ram Garib Chaube. People used to think of William Crook only.
Yeah. Because, of course, there is this racial aspect, Britishers were the ones to be seen. And then, the translator was not visible. The translation was something transparent, while we know that it was not like that, but I mean, okay. So, I don't know if you are acquainted with Shakuntala, Vigyana Shakuntala, huh? That was, Kalidasa's drama, and it was translated into English by Sir William Jones in 1789. And this was a crucial translation because this traveled to Europe, and Goethe exalted it. And, for example, James Mill said, oh, this is very bad. So, I mean, but Europe discovered Sanskrit and the beauty of the wonder that was India, So what is interesting is that, I don't know if you know about what kind of translation is that. It's very nice because, of course, after this translation, okay, let me first explain to you. I don't know if you read it, if you know, but okay, I just give you an example. Shakuntala in English never sweats. Never. Because because, you know, I mean, for an English woman is, you know, that, how do they say? A man, a horse sweat, a man perspires, and a woman feels a little hot. You know, so I mean, in this sort of situation, I mean, you have your heroine, it's the beauty of it, and she sweats. Oh, come on. That's, I mean, censorship, you know, all the places where there are a lot of instances, you know, and this was done because he was reading the text, you know, he was also ignorant of another important fact. I mean, being a scholar of literature, for me, this is very interesting, you know, because, I mean, in the Sanskrit tradition, when a woman sweats, it has a meaning. It means sweating is sexual arousal. So if you cut it out, of course, your heroine will be very, I mean, you even give deodorant to her because, I mean, a woman doesn't have to perspire, but you're really cutting something that is very important from the literary point of view. I don't know, I don't think he was aware of that, but you see that the English Shakuntala, I mean, had some differences. Okay, let's just remain to this. But what is interesting is that the fact that Shakuntala was translated into English had an effect also in Indian languages, because in the 19th century, we suddenly have a lot of translation of Shakuntala from Sanskrit into Marathi, Hindi, Gujarati, and so on and so forth. Which means that, you know, there is, as I said, you know, there is always this sort of like circle. You have this translation, the translation is made for some purposes by the colonial people, but then it's appropriated by the local people, let's call them local people, Indians from all over India, you know, Maratha and whatever. And they use this translation for other purposes. And the purposes was to show that, look, somebody said that one shelf of a Western library is better than whatever has been written in India for thousands of years. But look, we have Shakuntala. So it's like, you know, speaking back, talking, like responding to them. And of course, another part of the translation story is the part regarding the Bible, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But of course, also that was useful to develop the vernacular, so-called, I'm using vernacular languages to use, you know, this idea of, you know, Indian languages and so on. And of course, in this aspect, the idea of equivalence came into play, because when you are translating a sacred text, the Bible, and you know, the missionaries were very keen for, you know, the fact that there must be equivalence. So you see, this is when the notion of equivalence comes into, let's call it, the Indian tradition of translation. Moreover, as I said, there was a standardization in Indian languages, because, you know, dictionaries, grammars, all these are created.
So there is this very popular Gita in translation, that of ISKCON, the Krishna consciousness.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
So they call it the Gita as it is in English, but a Sanskrit scholar call it Gita as it isn't for that translation.
Okay, because, you know, each and every tradition, religious tradition, has, you know, their own interpretation. But this is a different level, you know, because of course then you have, it's like, you know, having another commentary on the Gita, you know, which is done through translation. And of course, each and every sampradaya will claim that our tradition is the right one. So I mean, so, but okay. Yes, but you know, ISKCON comes a little bit later in the. I mean, so I don't think it has to do with this first wave of, you know, translating into English and then going back into the local languages in India, because this English translation is like, you know, like prompting the notion that if we do translation, then we are like creating our identity and, you know, affirming our identity. this is what the point I wanted to make. So I want to give you the example of the Padmavat. Padmavat is a 16th century epic poem written by a Sufi poet, Malik Muhammad Jaisi, and manuscript that we have is in Persian script. So as I told you, there is this Katha tradition that was there in many different languages and scripts, and Francesco Orsini has done a wonderful work on that. So if you want to know more about this, different layers of Katha tradition, there is I quoted her. The image from, and of course it was written in Awadhi, but Awadhi was written in Persian script. We also have later, let's say, translations or retelling of the story, because like the Bengali version that comes one century later is inspired by the Padmavat, but it's not the same thing, but it's almost the same thing, with variation. What is interesting is that in the 19th century, and maybe for the French students, this is important, we have a translation into, anybody knew about this translation? I mean, it has a French avatar that is, quite old, because we are in the middle of the 19th century. We have Theodore Pavie, and he was like an Indologist, somebody who was, I told you there is this fashion of Sanskrit, and Sanskrit is the mother of all languages, and India is the cradle of all civilizations and all these things. And then we have this story, which is a Katha, of course, because he reads it as, a good example of this warrior spirit. And he speaks of that as the bards of Rajasthan and Hindu poets converted to Islamism have told with equal enthusiasm in the old idioms of the country as well as in Persian the history of this beautiful princess, daughter of the king of Ceylon and wife of the Rana of Chittor, who excited the covetousness of Sultan Alauddin. So this translation in French has a later avatar, which is an opera. You know what an opera is? It's like, this performance where you have a written text that is sung and put into the stage. And at the beginning of the 20th century, in 1922, the translation that was done in the middle of 19th century was like taken, adapted to an opera form, and it becomes a ballet opera with the title of Padmavati. So, what is important is that this story was seen as something interesting because it was an Indian history of, the story of violence, desire, and sacrifice. So, if you think of that, we should think that Padmavat has had a great, success in becoming an important work in, let's call it world literature, because come on, it was translated into French, it was made into an opera. So, but where is Padmavat to be seen in the European, let's say, history of world literature? It is nowhere to be seen. Even if we have this translation, it just, it remains there in the English, in the Anglophone world. It's not mentioned. In India, we know that there were many recreations or translations, let's call them how we want, in several languages, and also Persian. And there is Srinivasan who wrote about that. But this work was not really recognized as literature, as an important work of literature, like Shakuntalam. And why? We know, by the way, that at that time there were many, many books from India circulating in Europe. Because, you know, for example, Francesco Orsini and Damrosch also, who you know, they write about world literature. I mean, there are many, many books that were imported into Europe that circulated, but, you know, in the critical, you know, the critics, आलोचनात्मक दृष्टिकोण से ये कोई अच्छी किताब नहीं होती है. So this makes us think, should put us to think about the fact that Padmavat that becomes Padmavati, it becomes it has a story of circulation in Europe, but to be recognized as literature, we need something more, because it was something that just happened and then disappeared. We can also see that even in South Asia, Padmavati, actually it's Padmavati, the Padmavati story. So it was there, but you can see that slowly, Jaisi is sort of forgotten. You know, everybody forgets about him. And the problem is, why should a Sufi poem, a Muslim, write in Hindi and not in Persian or Hindu? And tell us a story about Hindu Rajput heroes instead of talking about Muslims, Sultan of Delhi. Because, and here I have a quotation by Grierson, who was a very famous linguist. I don't know if you know him, but I mean, he is very famous, you know. And he of what the Hindu mind can do when freed from the tremors of literary and religious customs. My point is that, you know, as I told you, the mental attitude was such that for colonial administrators, for Orientalists, you know, at that time, and we can see also, you know, what is imported in Europe, religion and caste were the categories of identity in South Asia. So, and Padmavat is problematic because it has the wrong script, the wrong author, you know, okay, it tells the right story, but, you know, if we see, Jaisi is always very keen of, you know, like telling us that this is not like only a love story, there is a different layer in the story and so on. And so, the Awadhi Sufi Malik Muhammad Jaisi is just forgotten. In fact, if we check what happened, Pavi's translation is not a translation of Jaisi's Padmavat, is the translation of another version of the Padmavat, that is Gaurabad al-Katha. That is almost the same story. So it's let's call it like a translation in this wider sense. That was, he identifies it as Rajasthani, because you remember it was written, it is like a Rajasthani poem and blah, blah, blah. But actually what was there was a Braj adaptation, and which was written in Lahore under Pathan patronage. So, but in the mind of the translator, this was the good thing. And for these people, okay, Jaisi, of course, must have been a Hindu converted to Islam. Otherwise, how can you write about a Hindu princess and blah, 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 blah. So you see that the notion of Rajput valor and so on cannot be ascribed to an author that is a Muslim, and Jatmal Nahar, he's more suitable to this because he's a Hindu. This is what happens in this, you know, set of translations, which is like, of course, I mean, in the end, is identified as, you know, the Padmavat, but it's, you know, very different. And of course, there is also the way then Padmavat was, let's say, retaken as the story of the Hindu resistance against the Muslim invasion. You know, so you see that there are so many things going into this story, and it's interesting because it's just one text. And then I would like to add one final thing, that of course we can see that if we see the world's literature, we find Kabir, Mirabai, Tulsidas, they are there, I mean, of the same time, you know, but Padmavat is nowhere to be seen. And the only modern, let's say, contemporary translation into a European language that I found is an Italian translation made by my colleague Milanetti, who teaches in Rome. No other translation of Padmavat by Jaisi. Why that? In my opinion, it is because of this kind of selected reading of the text. Another important thing is that even in the Persian archive, we find a silence about something that in the 17th century, I mean, it was praised as an example of wonderful poetry, and Jaisi was hailed as the chief of the poets. But if we look at the Persian archive, very few local histories mention the Padmavat, and it's never mentioned in like biographical dictionaries of poets, of Sufi saints. And Francesca Orsini, who worked on this, I mean, she worked on this issue, she suggested that we need, and I agree, we need a different approach, because if we think that this ethno-religious and monolingual understanding of identity, language, literature, and script is, which is what we have, or I mean, we are studying Hindi literature as if it were something totally different from the Urdu literature. But we know that this is the result of a very recent history. And even the Manak Hindi that I studied is, I think its coinage is very, very recent. So if we use this kind of lens, the whole notion of translation is not to be seen, you know, because, I mean, we are thinking of separate worlds. We need a different approach. And I cannot prescribe what the right approach is, but of course it is what to, I will come back to this, trying to have different geographies and see even the notion of multilingualism is not Hindi and Urdu and Bengali. It's this like very complex flux of languages and of texts in what we call translation, that are maybe not word-to-word translation, but they are like adaptation and, you know, rewriting of the text. So I don't know, should I stop here or can I just go on for a little bit? Okay. So yeah, very, very quickly, I would like also to say something about what I found about, you know, translation now, you know, let's come to the 20th century. We are just, you know, we're not doing the history of translation in India, you know, I'm just trying to see what happens in translation, you know, India and translation, you know, translation and India. So in independent India, what we see is that there is a process of institutionalization of translation. India is now a nation state, And you know, the fact, well, there was the famous idea of, you know, unity in diversity and so on, but the necessity to create a literary awareness of all Indian literatures just, you know, made the government aware of the fact that this could happen through translation. As it was said, you know, translation is a bridge. So if we want to strengthen our nation, we have to create a bridge among these different linguistic and cultural fields. So the establishment of the Sahitya Academy is a very important part of this project, because of course the officially accepted languages were there, but also other languages were added. What is interesting is that the linguistic policy is that everything passes through English. So there is no direct translation among Indian languages. The Sahitya Academy created a system where you have to go from Bodo to English and from English to Hindi, from Malayalam to English and from English to Bengali. So, I mean, you never have a direct translation. And I think yesterday we discussed how this can be somehow debatable. But this is what is there. In any case, the Indian literature, the Sahitya Academy Journal, says that Indian literature is one, though written in many languages, and so I mean it's one literature in many languages. So it's like saying that they are all the same. You know, when they are translated, they are all the same. Sorry.
The origins of this idea of one Indian literature of Sahitya Academy that you're talking about lies in a project that was taken up by Sisir Kumar.
Yes, Sisir Kumar Das. Yes, but I mean, I don't want to go into this story. I'm just trying to give you, you know, some ideas of what happened, you know. And yes, Sisir Kumar Das, he was really like proposing that there is only one Indian literature. And other people were claiming that there are many Indian literatures, but we are not discussing literature. You know, we are just discussing the process of translation, the fact that translation becomes something that is commissioned by the government through institutionalized agencies, and the National Book Trust also. And then we can see that there are also like individual translators that take up the task of promoting translation. We will come back to Mahashweta Devi and the translation of Mahashweta Devi, of the translation of Mahashweta Devi's works by Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak. We will come back to this some other day, but this was like a person who decides that I will translation somehow, you know, through my translation. Also, A.K. Ramanujan, I mean, he decided that, you know, through translation, he would promote, for example, ancient Sangam literature. And this is something that we can discuss how we did it, if it's right or wrong, if we agree with this method or not. But I mean, this is what happened. So, of course, slowly, the academic translation into English became very important, also because let's say that English was something that was very present in the institutions, like in universities, and it was important, the fact that translation studies, for example, developed in like comparative studies institutes and so on. So this, of course, is the reason why translation was into English. After the 80s, there are a lot of important reviews, like books, like the Book Review, the Indian Review of Books, that, of course, they are in English, but they translated or reviewed books that were also in other languages. And the fact that prizes for translation were created, of course, it gave impetus to the idea of translating. Today we see that there are very prominent publishing houses that are, like, you know, promoting translation from Indian languages into English. And also, I would say, I didn't write it, but because, you know, there is also a lot of like interest in translating into Hindi, and some of the publishers are also, like, you know, getting interested in translating into other languages. But for example, that was Rita Kothari here. She says in one of her books, Translating India, the paucity of translation from one language into another is not an outcome of distribution and prominence available to English language activity are not available to regional language publishing. So here we bring into the picture another aspect, that is not only the act of translating, the choice of the books, but also, you know, the general field of publishers and distribution. And I don't know, maybe about Hindi, I think you know more than I do, because this is not my field, you know. I don't know much about what is happening now about, you know, the distribution for Hindi or other regional languages. But of course, I mean, we can see that the network of indie publishers is not as powerful as the network of English publishers. And so, I mean, I think this is valid also for other Indian languages. So maybe this is also one of the reasons why translations from Hindi to Marathi, or I don't know, maybe are not so common as, you know, translation English to Hindi, Hindi to English, or something like that. Somebody was telling me also who are, like, really bilingual, that can, because here everybody is bilingual, but translating from one language to another requires the translator to have a good competence both in the source language and in the target language. And so sometimes the translators have a good competence in English and their own Indian language, or, you know, but they don't feel so comfortable in, you know, translating from in their Indian language into another Indian language. I don't know. Somebody was discussing with me about that, and I think maybe this is also part of the story. And the marketing of the so-called regional languages books. We know that, you know, what is considered high literature has a certain kind of market, and what's considered pulp literature has a different kind of market. So translations maybe are promoted in some fields and not in others. For example, I think that, you know, Rita Kothari wrote about the story of translation into Gujarati from English, and the circulation of this that were considered like pulp literature, but this is something that people would buy. But what kind of translation is that? Maybe somebody of you would like say, oh, this is not good translation, because, you know, the translation would not be faithful, it would not be equivalent, you know. But you know, this is something that still happens. And this is, I think, a general phenomenon that is changing, but there is the problem that translation is not considered a major activity, a major literary activity. And I'm talking about literary because this is what I do. It is either, if you are a translator and you are just like a commercial translator, then you're just, you know, any machine could do your job. If you are a translator of literature, oh, come on, it's not such a good job. You're getting paid very low and very little. And so, I mean, this is probably another reason why not many people want to become translators. Or, you know, a lot of people would like to become translators, but they would also like to have better payment conditions, you know, and working conditions. I would like to finish with this notion of translation and recognition, because I was mentioning about the visibility of being translating into English, and the fact that, you know, it has a very important role in projecting both the translator and the writer, you know, into the international sphere. I have the example of what happened to Gitanjali Shri. I have known her for many, many years before she was, you know, Gitanjali Shri, and I remember when Mai was translated. Mai, I think nobody knew about this writer and this novel until the English translation came out. And the English translation was made by not a professional translator, but a social anthropologist, because Nita Kumar is not a translator. Oh, well, she is a translator because she does translation, but her profession is being an anthropologist. So, and she chose this translation as a means to bring to attention of the audience feminist issues, the women's problems, women's fiction, and the translation itself. Because what is interesting in the English version of Mai is this so-called paratext, you know, so what is around the text. Because Nita Kumar writes and afterwards writes a whole explanation of what this translation means, puts this text into the history of anthropology, uses the story in order to show how it's about a mother, a very typical Indian mother, always silent and so on, and then, you know, how the daughter is like recovering the mother's voice, but at the same time Nita Kumar is recovering her own voice and through this translation. So this is really very interesting. And of course, then in 2022 we have, you know, the Booker Prize, and, you know, another example of what a translation can do. I remember when Red Samadhi came out, nobody gave a damn about that novel. Here in India, nobody was impressed by it. After it got the Booker Prize, everybody was like talking about Red Samadhi. And even in the West, you know, I mean, I'm talking about the West because it's like America and Australia and whatever. Now everybody wants to translate Red Samadhi. Daisy Rockwell is a wonderful translator, and she's like a star because you see. So this translation means to be translated, means to be recognized. But is this valid for all the languages? So I'm just giving you some examples. For sure, this is valid for English. And that's probably why I know many people who write and they hope that they will be translated into English. Or, you know, but this is not only in India, even in Italian, you know, Italian is like a minor language. We are at the periphery of the empire, you know, we are not America, we are not English speakers. Italian now has no prestige. So, I mean, so even young Italian writers, of course, they are keen to be translated into English. If you are translated into English, oh, come on, you have made it, you know. So, and this, of course, happened, as I said, to Mahashweta Devi. Mahashweta Devi didn't need to be translated into English in order to be a great writer. But when Spivak translated her, oh, everybody had to translate Mahashweta Devi in any language, you know. And also, for example, I'm quoting C.S. Lakshmi, who's a famous Tamil writer, and I mean, I've been writing for many years in Tamil, but it is only after I've been translated into English that I'm invited to forums like this. So being translating into English was actually a kind of promotion, because when you write only in Tamil, they assume that you don't have anything to state. So you see, you are, I mean, what you are writing is the same thing, but when it is translated, it has more value, it is more important, I don't know. So, of course, this tells us a lot about what I was telling you, you know, the mentality in the colonial time. It was linked to this colonial project, but even today, maybe we should think about what is called, you know, intelligentsia, the Indian middle class, who are, you know, the people who speak in English, and, you know, the distinction between what is written in English and what is regional. This very division about, you know, what is regional. I mean, regional, what does it mean? You know, it's like, I don't know, something that is not so important, that is like local, you know, it's something that is not speaking for everybody. So English is still projected as, you know, the field where you really have the national document. Even if there is a lot of, you know, talking about Hindi, and so on, but still, somebody was talking about, you know, the double aspect of Hindi. You know, we were discussing with somebody, you know, that Hindi is a language of power, of course, but it is also a subaltern language somehow. So you see, and in translation, of course, for some languages, being translated into Hindi is interesting. But think of what is happening, for example, for some, I'm thinking of like an experiment like Adivani, you know, it's like this publishing house that was promoting translation from Adivasi languages into English, not Hindi. And why that? Because Hindi, in certain contexts, is identified as the language of the government, you know, the nation state. That is the very problematic thing for many Adivasi communities. So there are all these things going on, and I think, of course, you know, this is really something that is a very important characteristic of the translation field in India, as I see it. You know, maybe you have different points of view. We can discuss on that now in the next minutes. But oh, I wanted to finish just showing to everybody what Keshav ji suggested. When was it? 2 days ago, first day. I don't. He suggested to us, and so I just wanted to share it with you, because this is a very interesting database, and I think it's really something that is promising for the future of Indian translation. I don't know how to say it. I mean, it's translation in India. I don't know, because it's like a depository of different translation in different languages, and maybe you want to go to this website, and it is written. I took what is written on the website. Bhashavad has noted a massive leap between the first 50 years of the 20th century, with 125 translations, and the first 20 years of the 21st century, with 2,673 translations. So the database is evolving and so on. And of course, there are languages that are more present, there are languages that are less represented, but the aim of this project is to create an even wider database. And another thing is that, you know, they are listing, you know, the authors that are translating, and interesting enough, of course, we have different publishers, and the authors are Rabindranath Tagore, Surat Chandra Chattopadhyay, Premchand, Amrita Pritam, William Shakespeare, Sadat Hasan Manto, Mahavita Devi, Jules Verne, and Satyajit Roy. So, I mean, this is just, you know, what I think you said it was established very recently. So I think.
But it was announced in November or December.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I think this is a good picture of what is going on now, as you know, a project, big project for translation. And interestingly enough, it's coming from a private university. So, I mean, this is again something I was talking about, the institutionalization of translation. So what is the translation policy of the Sahitya Academy? What is the translation policy, for example, of this project? I think it would be very interesting to compare these different approaches for people who study translation, of course. I'm not going to do it. So I will just shut up, and we have a few minutes if you want to discuss, ask questions. And
regarding the disparity in translation within Indian languages, but so regarding the disparity in translation, that you were saying that there is more translations and more prestige associated with translation in English. So there is this former professor in DU who wrote a paper about Chaturvarna system of languages, where he imagines languages in India within a Chaturvarna system, where Hindi and Sanskrit lies at the core, then come the scheduled languages, then come the non-scheduled languages, and thereafter the Adivasi languages, and where English is imagined outside the Chaturvarna system and has an emancipatory potential.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's also what, for example, there are some Dalit groups that claim that we should not stick to Hindi, we should just use English because, English is what will take us out of these fetters of, Hindi, which is identified somehow, with this Hindu system. Because, well, whether we like it or not, I mean, we can see that actually there has been a prevalence of Savarna people in Hindi studies, in Hindi academic world for a long time. Things are probably changing, but very slowly, and of course, this is like an ongoing process. So, yeah.
Also
Just
about the publishing and translation. There is something very interesting that I found recently when I visited the World Book Fair, where the traditionally English publishers like Penguin and Bloomsbury are venturing into publishing into Indian languages as well as translations within Indian languages. Penguin had a stall called Penguin Swadeshi at the World Book Fair this time.
I think when Penguin started publishing Hindi books, that was really like a breaking thing. So just because you have talked a lot in these days, I would like other people to ask questions. Sorry, I don't want to censor anybody, but even from, if anybody has questions from home, I don't know, maybe from home, I mean from the online, wherever they are.
केशव जी और सभी साथियों, मैडम मारिना जी, ये मैं एक चीज मैं निवेदन करता हूँ आप सभी लोगों से। अंग्रेजी तो भारत में ऐसे ही गुलामी के दिनों की भाषा है और हम सारे ही लोग अब तक गुलाम हैं, क्योंकि हम इस अंग्रेजी के सुशोभनपन से मुक्त नहीं हुए। अभी एक वो देखा भी मित्रों से बात करते हुए, जो बात मैंने आज से 12 साल पहले जो बात की थी, उन्होंने शायद मैंने अपनी बात रखी और वो उन्होंने अपने लेख में डाल दिया और वो आ भी गई। अंग्रेजी का यही जलवा है कि मैं यार इसको जरा 1 मिनट के लिए बंद कर लीजिए। प्रसारण रोक दीजिए, प्रसारण एक मिनट।
I think I will talk about Francesco Orsini's approach to world literature, and I think it's really very important. We will have time to discuss that in one of the next meetings, because I think what she's suggesting is that we really avoid this approach of distinguishing languages and reading geographies through the lenses of our present, let's call it nationalist, because it's a nation state, and the nation state has not always been there. And if we want to understand what, the roots of what is there now, we should really look at different geographies, and these, what she calls meaningful geographies. And I will try to give you an example of that. I don't know if it's tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Sorry, I can't remember. They have some things, thoughts about that. And I think what she's suggesting about world literature in the South Asian context is really interesting, because it gives you an idea of a different ecology of languages and text circulation, and of how even this idea of the center and the periphery, these are always like, I mean, we have an idea of what is the center and what is the periphery, but like I don't know if any of you is familiar with Francesca's, I think it came out last year, East of Delhi, Francesca Orsini. Yeah. She published this book, East of Delhi. I don't know if you have ever heard of that. I think it's wonderful, because she's really like decentering the very notion of the geography, and going into these kasbahs, into these places that are east of Delhi, so I mean, they're not in the center, but what happens there sometimes disrupts the discourse, the narration, that the narrative that has been created about, for example, Hindi literature, and even the canon of Hindi literature. I'm talking about Hindi because that's what, but she's like, using Hindi, Urdu, Awadhi, and, other languages. And she's like comparing all these. I think it's a wonderful work. And so maybe that's why I quoted this thing today, that, the categories that have been used probably are not so useful. I mean, they were not valid at that time, but they're still somehow, in our approach to translation. So I don't know how this can be done. Maybe the younger generation can really work on that. And well, for example, if I think of I am a translator because okay, I happen to have studied Hindi, and I love literature, and so for me it is really a pleasure to translate into Italian these books. But I am very disappointed, about the way translation is considered in Italy, because well, I will talk about, for example, my experience of translating Great Samadhi, even if you don't like this book, but I mean, okay, it's just the problems that I had in translating this text, that is really a complex text. So but
all translators are translating this book from English.
No, we translated from Hindi.
Hindi?
Yeah, I mean, Gitanjali didn't want it to be translated from English. She insisted to have a translator from
She
Hindi.
knows that translation is not of my book.
Well, let's say that she knew that she had to accept some compromises, because the editors are like that, but I think, but Daisy is a very good translator, and she made some choices, then we can agree or not agree with that, but any translator is responsible of their own choices. And so, but for me, when I was offered this translation, it was the first time in my life, having a major publisher coming to me and saying, would you like to translate this book? And I felt like, oh my God, what happened, in Italy. And then, it was funny, because they were like asking, but why doesn't the author want it to be translated from English? And I said, well, because she's writing in Hindi, and, I mean, and she doesn't have to justify the fact that she's writing in Hindi. I mean, you can like or not like her style, but she's using a language which is not like a dialect of a minority. I don't know. It's a major language in the world. Oh, okay. So, but can you translate it from Hindi? Well, I don't know if I can, but I can try. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, Hindi. It's something very weird. It's like, okay, you're coming from Mars. This is the attitude that they have in Italy. You know. And this is very frustrating because I mean, I've been doing this job for, well, quite a few years. And it's really frustrating, you know, when you see that they always check the English translation and they ask you, why did you translate like that? Because I am translated the Hindi text. And even if which is not the English, it's the American translation is like this and this and that, fine. But I am translating from Hindi. I'm not translating from English. But they expect you to go through, which in any case, you see, I mean, we are blaming this, but it's what the Sahitya Academy is doing. That's what I'm doing, you know. So we are just, you know, discussing this thing, but it's what has been institutionalized from the 50s. And nobody ever said to the Sahitya Academy Valas, okay, why do we have to go through English? Why? Well, there is a reason, of course, it's money, it's the fact that you don't have translators. I can understand it, but you know, the policy, the linguistic policy goes through English. So why are we blaming the people who want to be translated into English? I mean, it's the Sahitya Academy that says that we have to go through English. There is something wrong, you know. Everybody's, and it's the old story about Hindi. Everybody's saying, oh, Hindi here, Hindi there, and then they send their children to English schools. Okay, I know why, and I'm not blaming people who, but I mean, we cannot have this sort of schizophrenic thing, you know, that you're always saying, oh, Hindi, 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 and then people who want to study Hindi at the university, very often it's because they couldn't enter another program. I mean, we know it. Let's say it. It's sad. So Hindi is a language of power, but it is also a language of, you know, the people who cannot make it to English. And this is, I think, you know, what is something that in India is being like, I don't know. Confusion. Yeah, and of course, you know, the official narrative cannot be like this, because the official narrative is Hindi अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर आइए और बताइए कि हिंदी विदेश में कैसे महत्वपूर्ण भाषा होती है. अब इटली में हिंदी कैसे सिखाते हैं? ठीक है, मैं 30 साल से बताती हूँ कि इटली में हिंदी कैसे सिखाती हूँ, और कुछ मिला? कुछ नहीं. कोई पैसा नहीं मिला, कुछ नहीं मिला. मैंने एक लेख भी लिखा जिसमें हिंदी में है, जिसमें मैंने बताया कि ये देखिए, हाँ ठीक है, मैं हिंदी सेविका हूँ, देखिए मैं हिंदी सेविका हूँ, लेकिन इटली में मतलब भारत की सरकार की ओर से कोई सहायता नहीं दिया जाता. तो मैं मतलब क्या करूंगी? हाँ, बच्चों को मतलब स्टूडेंट को मैं हिंदी सिखाऊंगी, लेकिन फिर क्या होता है कि हम हाँ बोलते बोलते रहते हैं, लेकिन वास्तव में जो पॉलिसी है वो ही रहेगी. और मुझे ये फ्रस्ट्रेशन होता है कि 30 साल में कोई बदलाव नहीं देखा. यहाँ मतलब ये अभी स्थिति अलग होती है, लेकिन जो विदेश में पढ़ाते हैं, पता नहीं कि इसराइल में कैसा होता है, लेकिन हम सब, जैसे मेरे कोलीग जो स्विट्जरलैंड, हंगरी, पोलैंड, हम सब हमेशा शिकायत करते हैं कि हम हमको बुलाते हैं जब ये दिखाना है कि ये अंतरराष्ट्रीय होता है, तो वहां अलेसंद्रा कंसोलारो की जरूरत होती है। जब मैं बताती हूँ कि अच्छा पता नहीं ये चाहिए, अच्छा ठीक है, कुछ किताबें चाहिए, फिर जो मैं मांगती हूँ वो नहीं मिलती हूँ, सिर्फ सवारकर की किताबें मिलती हूँ, और ठीक है मैं उसको बच्चों को देती हूँ, लेकिन ये थोड़ा सा मतलब मेरे लिए शायद अलग तरह की किताबें चाहिए। और फिर आजकल बच्चों को किताबें नहीं चाहिए, सब कुछ इंटरनेट में है, तो हमें जैसे कि यहाँ के लोग को निमंत्रण देने के लिए, आप जैसे कि मान लीजिए मैं आपको निमंत्रण देना चाहती हूँ, आइए तो रीनो, लेकिन पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे? आईसीसीआर से, ठीक है, आईसीसीआर से पैसे मिलेगा, बहुत पैसे हैं, लेकिन हमारे यहाँ ये मतलब शायद इसको बंद करना होगा, पता नहीं। क्योंकि ये जो ब्यूरोक्रेसी जो है,
तो पिछले विगत 3 दिनों से हम लोग इस अद्भुत आई थिंक जेएनयू में पहली बार अनुवाद पर केंद्रित कुछ कार्यक्रम हो रहा है। जैसा कि सुबह के सेशन में प्रोफेसर ने खुद बोला कि कैंपस के अंदर काफ़ी पॉपुलर हो रखा है, तो उसी नज़रिए से ये काफ़ी महत्वपूर्ण प्रोग्राम चल रहा है। उसमें कई एक्सपर्ट लोग अपनी बात रख रहे हैं, भाषण रख रहे हैं। तो आज के इस सत्र के लिए मैं अलेसंद्रा मैम को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ। Gracias tanto. And Emporium Titan Kamsamida. And of course Marina मैम also यहाँ पर है, तो उनका भी धन्यवाद फिर से ज्वाइन करने के लिए। एंड आज हम लोग विषय से थोड़ा इधर उधर गए, लेकिन नवीन सर ने बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण बिंदु को, पहलू को हम लोग के सामने रखा है। मैं भी क्योंकि विदेशी भाषा में हूँ तो ट्रांसलेशन का काम होता रहता है, और विदेश में भी रहा हूँ। जो गंगा सर ने जो झेला है वो मैं भी 10 साल लगभग झेला हूँ, और ट्रांसलेशन के संदर्भ में कई काम करते रहते हैं। और इटालियन का जो केस बताया वो भी मेरा कुछ अलग कनेक्शंस हैं, तो ट्रांसलेशन की भूमिका और वहाँ पर जो ट्रांसलेशन की स्थिति उसके बारे में अवगत हूँ। तो इन सब तो आज का जो विषय, आज का जो ये सेशन रहा, तो विषय पर केंद्रित रहा ही, उसके अलावा जो प्रैक्टिकल जो बोलते हैं, जो आने वाले दिनों में युवा पीढ़ी की जरूरत, उसके लिए जो महत्वपूर्ण बिंदु थे उनको सामने लाने के लिए नवीन सर को धन्यवाद रहेगा, जो कि आज युवा पीढ़ियों को आगे वाले दिनों में काफ़ी सहयोग देने वाली है। एंड ऑफकोर्स बहुत सी ऐसी चीज़ें थी जो कि सर का 30-40 साल का एक्सपीरियंस जो कि हम लोग कुछ मिनट में ही मिल रहा है, लेकिन सर ने 30-40 साल के अनुभव के बाद हम लोग के साथ साझा किया, उसके लिए तो हम लोग अंतर्मन से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका रहेगा सर। तो इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं आज इस सत्र को धन्यवाद देते हुए समापन की घोषणा करता हूँ, और इसी तरह लगातार हम लोग अभी आने वाले दिनों में मिलते रहेंगे और ज्ञान का आदान प्रदान होता रहेगा। धन्यवाद सबको।